Okay, Mayor Froese, we have quorum now, please.
Great, thank you. All right, so now reconvene the regular afternoon meeting, and we're in reports to council. The next one is number 3, E3, and that's strengthening communities services. And this is some grant funding I think we discussed earlier in the year. If I could have a motion on number 3. Council Long moves it, seconder. Is there a seconder? Council Arneson. Is there any discussion on number 3? Let's wait till there's
I'm
a
sorry,
side
Mayor
down.
Froese?
Councilor Whitmarsh.
Mayor Froese, if you could speak a little louder, we can just barely hear
Oh,
you
okay.
right now.
Make closer, maybe that's the problem. How's that? All right, so we have E3 has been moved and seconded. So Councilor Whitmarsh next, and then Councilor Richter.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry, I just have a question to your worship, to staff. I noticed that on this one, the budget was 2.5 million, and the money received is 2.04. And it then talks in here about funding for the 2.04 and having $457,000 remaining. Is that $457,000 still to be spent? Or is it not to be spent because we were only going to spend what came in the grant itself? And that I was just sort of looking for some clarification on what we are actually spending.
Thank you. Mr. Backen, I'm not sure who is best to answer this question, but I'll turn it over to you.
Your Worship, I'm getting the nod from Mr. Backen.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I'll respond. Your Worship, the expenditure, the proposed expenditure subject to Council's approval is actually outlined on the table on page 7 of E3. And I guess in summary, the grant amount is $2.5 million. As part of an expression of interest process, we have secured, again subject to Council's approval, proposals from agencies outlined. I think there's 4 of them that will be the recipient of the bulk of the funding, and then the remaining almost $500,000, $400-something thousand, would be for internal costs in terms of administration, in terms of bylaw enforcement, and processing.
Okay, so we did receive the 2.5 in from a granting agency, the full 2.5.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Richter.
Yeah, my question was similar. The 457,980 that's left, is this going to be enough to cover all the costs we will incur? And for how long a period will these costs be covered?
Your Worship, as I recall, the expression of interest and the proposals received is for a two-year program. So that's what is intended. Or is it 1 year? 1 year. Apologize, for 1 year process. So there are no commitments beyond the 1 year.
Okay, will we be expected to carry on with the enhanced bylaw enforcement after the year is gone?
Your Worship, the anticipated enforcement will be associated and based on the additional work in terms of the additional services being provided, and will be procured based on a contractual basis that will only go for 1 year. So there won't be any additional requirements after the 1 year period.
So whoever we hire to do this will no longer be working for us after a year?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is very, very, very positive, because I remember talking with a staff member when it was proceeding and going through. I said, I wonder what our chances for getting what this would be, and we did get it. And it's a great opportunity. It can be spread around through the community. So I just wanted to compliment staff for the work they did. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see no further questions. I'll call the question for E3. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. move on to E4, it's Alder Grove Gateway Project pre-approvals. And if I could have a motion, please. Somebody want to move this? Councillor Long, second by Councillor Davis. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'd like to defer this or refer it for a presentation because this has come out of nowhere. And I'm very concerned that we're pre-approving something. I have questions around the widening in that area. Didn't we just spend like $2 million narrowing the road in that area in order to do like traffic calming? And I'm also concerned about the impact of this on the proposed parkade that's supposed to be part of the development going in at 272nd and Fraser Highway. So I really think before we jump on this and approve it, we need to discuss it. Thank you. And tonight's not a good night. We've got too many other things on the agenda.
Although I'm just going to check with staff. Are there any time constraints on this grant? I read so many reports today. I'm trying to remember which one had the time constraint.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there are, Your Worship. That is the reason why the report is actually in front of council, is because of the deadline. It is a requirement of the grant that the 50%, at least 50% of the funds be expended by end of March 2022. So that is the reason why this is in front of council, because in order for staff to ensure that that condition is met, there needs to be appropriate procurement processes put in place, and I guess for the acquisition of the services, whether it's the purchase of material or whether it's the consulting services to complete the design, those need to be in place for us to be able to complete or comply with that condition.
Okay, just a follow-up question on that, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's great that we go after grants, but why are we going after grants for things that don't fit in the game plan we're already working with? Like, this game plan is out of the blue, as far as I'm concerned. It hasn't been discussed in any great detail, and it should have been before we even put the grant thing in. Did we have a discussion? Maybe that was at one of the meetings that I missed.
So, Mr. Seffi, whether or not that request that, I mean, if council can do what they wish with this, if they want to say no, but there was a request that the grantor get confirmation from the Township of Langley by, I believe, the end of November, and we've told them that would be December 15th. Is that this one? And also, if you could also answer that question, I believe this is part of an Alder Grove, I don't know what the proper word would be, revitalization program or something that occurred several years ago that council had deliberated on. And so perhaps you could fill us in on that, answer those questions. That might help, Councillor Richter.
That's correct, Your Worship. As far as your first set of comments, I don't believe that it was part of a grant application report that may have come to council previously, Your Worship. However, in terms of the intent of the usage of the funds, should council approve it and should we be successful in the application, it is something that has been discussed with council at different times and based on different, I guess, occasions, including some in-camera meetings in terms of the acquisition of the properties and the complementary nature of what is intended in terms of a community plaza, the open space with the adjacent uses, as well as what staff heard and reported to council in the context of the former Alder Plaza in terms of the public requests or public input in terms of community gathering spaces and other associated uses. So this is what staff is doing in response to that. And again, as Councillor Richter referenced, trying to take advantage of grant opportunities.
Mr. Seffi, I think this is a bit complicated because there's actually two projects that are being contemplated. One is the road widening, and then one is the gateway or gathering area, as it's being called. As you said, this is really about obtaining grants. There's an opportunity to obtain them as long as we're obtaining them for purposes that council deems to be useful. The roadway is perhaps worthy of some explanation, because I believe some work has been done on the roadway, but more would be appropriate, because effectively this would allow for there to be extra laneage right up to what I guess would be the bowling alley. I think that's roughly where the area would be. And it would then be compliant with the Aldergrove, I guess, downtown core plan we've talked about for some time, that would increase traffic, but do it in a relatively safe way. The second part was really for a gathering spot, and by the nature of the application, we could look at it as being transitory, but we can't really call it being interim. The grant requires that the terms be for something that's going to be more, I guess, than simply interim work. But we look at this as being a decent, I think a decent transitory use for the area. And that's why it's been split into phases, because it would allow us to clean up some of the grade elevations that are between the two properties, and would allow for some landscaping, I guess, where the current restaurant building is. Is that probably a good summary?
That is an excellent summary. Thank you. And Your Worship, maybe I can just carry on that theme of two separate projects. It's in fact the reason why, as I said earlier, the reason why this is in front of council is because of the grant opportunity. Having said that, staff always looks at opportunities where we can complete other objectives, in a cost-efficient manner and cost-effective manner. So what staff is doing is recommending that should council direct staff to proceed with a grant opportunity, concurrent with that, in conjunction with that, it would make a lot of sense financially and otherwise to complete the remaining portion of the Fraser Highway widening, which has always been a goal of the township for many, many years. In terms of the piece that's missing and the piece that's fronting the project site, if I can call the plaza the project site. So in essence, I think it's about 70 or 80 meters of frontage of Fraser Highway that has not been widened in accordance with the long-term plans, and remains narrower than the sections to the east fronting ACUCC. So this project, again, the secondary part of the request, the $600,000, is to allow for the widening of Fraser Highway to happen in conjunction with the plaza works, such that we can realize some cost efficiencies.
Mr.
Okay,
Sethi?
I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I thought we had bought those properties in order to build a future parkade. And now it's going to be a public plaza. We did not discuss that. Also, how much money did we spend on traffic calming Fraser Highway in front of AUCC? And now we're talking about double widening the road. Like, this plan doesn't make sense to me, and I don't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Let me try again. Oh, there. Now I'm echoey. I did have a question with respect to this report, and I sort of am also feeling somewhat blindsided by it. And I understand, through your worship, maybe to Mr. Backen, that this is two complementary activities that are going on. My question was more having to do with, is this a draft conceptual plan? Because I had questions regarding the rationale for the design. So I'm not sure how we came up with this particular design and whether or not we'd actually done any engagement around this. We do have an Aldergrove Heritage Society, and I just wondered, what was the input? I understand there's a timeline and it needs to be done in a timely manner, but it does appear to me that we get into trouble when we start putting things into, I'll call it an historic community, without necessarily referencing what the public feedback would be about that. So that's my comment about that. And could we have an opportunity between now and when it has to go forward to be able to achieve that engagement? Thank you.
Mr. Sethi? It just comments on further work that needs to be done with this. I know it is a...
Your Worship, yes, this is conceptual. As I referenced earlier, the opportunity was presented, and staff is just following up on that. If there is no direction from council, to pursue this any further. Obviously, that is something that staff will take direction from council on. And as I said earlier, this is a conceptual plan. And again, subject to council's approval, it could be followed up with a detailed design that would be part of the expenditure that would then go towards meeting the grant deadline or the grant condition of expending 50% of the allocated funding of potentially up to $750,000 prior to March of 2022.
Thank you. Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't even know where to start on this one. So when I first got elected, again, only 3 years ago, I've been asking about this site, I think, every quarter since I got elected. And I had to learn about this by downloading it on Thursday. So I think we gotta be wondering, like, yeah, where exactly did this one come from? Why wouldn't, if we're pursuing grant opportunities, why this particular piece of property? Why not another one? Because to me, I would see this as a pretty prime spot to be looking at something to be pretty substantial and to move Alder forward with an ACUCC expansion, some structured parking, and potentially some mixed-use opportunities. I counted 17 trees on it. It doesn't sound very interim to me when you're planting 17 trees with a parking lot. So yeah, I would have preferred that we'd seen a council discussion on the future of this particular piece of property prior to seeing that somebody's been working on this for months already. And then why wouldn't we pursue this grant opportunity in another location of the township? To me, I don't view this as, now I'm in a position where we've got 2 days and I'm turning down $750,000 from a senior level of government. I don't particularly think that's fair or correct. Why wouldn't we have potentially looked at some different options throughout the township to solicit this grant money, maybe for Brookswood or other communities? But here we are looking at it for Aldergrove. So, Mr. Beck, and I also had another question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, in regarding to the potential timing of phase 2. I didn't think that would be dependent upon all the tenancies ending on that site. Is that correct? And then when would that potentially be?
Mr. Beck.
I didn't see a timing for phase 2 in this particular report, unless I missed it.
I don't think we've got as far as the timing for phase 2, but I believe the tenancies, with the exception of the fast food restaurant for KFC, I think that is the only one that's extended. I believe the rest have come to a conclusion. If not, they'll be coming to a conclusion very soon.
So we could look at, maybe I'll consider division here while others are talking. We could consider looking at the widening and the removal of some of these buildings that I believe are not tenanted any further. And maybe is that where some portion of the grant money would intend to go? So is this basically trying to get buildings demolished at senior levels of government? No, that's, I'm seeing shaking
No.
heads, so.
The grant couldn't be used for, I don't believe it could be used for the road. There's 2 streams. There's actually some part is grant and some part is for the road. To the extent they're divided into categories as per the table, which is, It's operating revenue and DCCs, $594 for the road, $600,000. And then the gateway was the grant of $750,000 using $250 from DCCs. We couldn't carry over the grant money, but we could continue with the road project to complete that section. Mr. Seffi, though, a good question was raised in terms of the opportunistic nature of this. Why was this chosen, say, over other projects that we thought might be available for the grant, just the grant side itself?
Again, the input that was received from the public as part of the Alder redevelopment proposal was something that was fresh in staff's mind. And one of the prompters, I guess, of this site as being selected, having had the benefit of the public input, the opportunity was I guess, considered and pursued. And if there are other opportunities, there may still be time in terms of meeting the grant deadline, the condition of expending the funds, then staff will certainly pursue those as well.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate those answers. Appreciate that very much. I could see when I considered division of this, of course, if I direct council to page 4 of the report, I think it makes sense to link the 2 projects together if there's site work going on, if this were to be approved and proceed. But we are required to be spending under Aldergrove Gateway, we're spending $250,000 of of township money from DCCs. I'm really not in favor of putting $250,000 of DCC funding towards a project where I'd want to develop the site and see the ACUCC expanded. So I don't want to put $250,000 into something that I don't actually want there. I wanted something a lot more substantial, maybe forward thinking, and a real expansion to the ACUCC, not a parking lot. So now I redirect council's attention to the last page of the phasing. If we don't know how many years phase 1 and phase 2 is going to be in place, we essentially have a parking lot which no one can get to. Is that true, or would there be some way to get to that parking lot as part of phase 1? Because phase 2, it looks like, doesn't include entry to the parking lot.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the reference is to the fact that this concept drawing actually has a bend that takes one, I guess would be from the south, going north to east in the current parking lot. That's one of the comments we had back on the conceptual plan. We really think there should be a linkage then between all of the parking lots so that there would be throughout. So that would be some of the things that would be worked out at the final design stage if that segment were to be advanced.
I believe phase 1 has 2, 4, 6 trees on it. So we're planting a bunch of trees on a site. So it feels very permanent. When I see this layout, it feels like a very long-term interim use. Is that staff's intention?
Well, I think the time frame was thought to be somewhere in the area of 5 to 10 years, because I think there's also other opportunities in terms of expansion of the building itself that this area could reserve it for. And we use that time frame because the grant opportunity can't be utilized for interim, but we're calling it transitory because, as we see in all downtown situations, there's a time for renewal, and that's usually in that time frame.
Okay, I'll leave my comments there. I may have some more based on other discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just had a couple of questions with regards to this, and so that I understand it better. The grant application, as I read in the package, says that 50% expenditures must be spent by March. Is there a deadline to apply for the grant, or you can apply for the grant anytime as long as you spend 50% of the expenditures by March? I'm kind of confused on what the deadline is for application.
Perhaps I can ask staff who are here to respond, because I don't know if there is a deadline. It's been pursuant to discussions. Mr. Chapman can perhaps respond, Your Worship.
Please. Thank you.
Yeah, Your Worship, we've made application for this program already, and we've been in discussions with senior level of government. And because of how their funding allocations work, or their budget appropriations, they have recommended that they would view us more favorably if we could commit to spending money within their first allocation, which would be the end of the federal budget's fiscal year, March 30th.
Okay, that's helpful information. So did I hear it said that if we had a different project that would meet the criteria, that we would still have time to redirect this application towards that? Did I hear staff say that there is time to do that if we had a different project or not?
I may have said that, Your Worship, in response to Councillor Whitmarsh, but I'm seeing shakes of heads from staff, so maybe I misspoke. As far as this particular application is concerned, I understand the deadline has come and gone, and we've already made the application. It's just that pursuant to further discussions with the provincial staff, the 50% expenditure requirement has been added as something that if we were to consider, it would be viewed more favorably by the grant administrators.
Right. Okay. So it seems like when I can try and reflect back on this area over the last this term and last term, my terms on council, that we talked about. I remember hearing a number of different times we've talked about possible uses for this property. Nothing was in a serious discussion, but there was talk about maybe, it was an expansion of the ACUCC, or it could be parking or other types of things, and we never really had a full-fledged conversation about it. I think I sort of recollect maybe having some discussions, maybe Mr. Winslade might have had some comments about this a few years ago about possible this land. I don't remember. Not putting him on the spot or anything, but he may have referred to it. And it seems like this did come a little bit surprise to me. I did not, I wasn't aware that we were sort of thinking of this. So I guess I'm interested in hearing maybe from staff as well on you know, the idea of that property being used for future ACUCC expansion. If we were to do something like this, does that mean that we wouldn't be able to do an expansion at some point? Do we need to expand ACUCC, or maybe it's great, maybe it's fine, we don't need to do anything, and this is a great addition? I'm just sort of trying to get a sense of why this idea now. Is it just simply to get the money? And of course, we all love to get free money. But I'm trying to get a sense of how this really ties in with the ACUCC for the future and what this means, what the implications of this would be for the ACUCC.
Your Worship, I'll jump in and let Mr. Seffi augment the comments. The challenge we've always seen through the COVID environment is the grant programs come and go very quickly. So we're often left scrambling to determine what we can seek funding for in very short time periods. So quite often staff then embark upon looking at their known state of facts, which is public input, public consultation, other sorts of information they have to try to put something together to take advantage of the funding that is flowing. For example, just recently we had the flooding issues, which of course puts the issues back to such things as dikes or pumps. We're actively working in those areas right now, trying to determine if there's any windows of opportunity we can bring back for Council's consideration, because that's where the opportunity lies. In this circumstance, I think the purpose behind the mall originally was to make sure we secured most of the properties around the ACUCC and as well had adequate parking in the short term. The more we can augment a parking lot to make it look a bit better than simply being lines of asphalt or asphalt with lines on it, the more we attempt to do so, especially when there's grade differences. And between these two properties, there's a grade difference that this could allow us to take. By the nature of the grant programs, again, we can't say they're transitory, but we do know that it will take some time to develop the site, as we've seen with even the existing Aldergrove Mall site, the Aldergrove Inn site. The average time to development is going to be something like 3 to 5 years if all goes well, hopefully sooner, but being realistic in terms of market conditions, consultants, busyness, COVID, all of those things, there's a sizable opportunity. The concept here was simply to do something in a transitory nature that would help while the buildings could be removed and to improve some of the traffic flows that were existing. Again, the intent would be to try to make it better in the medium term, because it would not be deemed to be transitory, be temporary, but it would allow us future expansion, whether it be mixed-use buildings or whatever may be necessary in the area as time and opportunity permits. In this situation, just a reminder that there is the two components, which one is the road component and one is the plaza component itself. One or both could fail. This is Council's opportunity to provide that direction. This is just part of the ongoing environment where when we do see grants, we have to strike quite quickly or they'll be lost, hence why we should be doing something here by March if it's going to fit into the first round of funding. Mr. Seffi?
I guess the only thing I would add, thank you, Mr. Backen, is the vision of the Aldergrove Community Plan and in particular the core plan that discusses the creation of this I guess gateway opportunity. So this is again, in staff's opinion, consistent with that vision. In addition to the uses, interim, transitional, as you've outlined, Mr. Backen, in terms of provision of parking and perhaps meeting some of the objectives that I referenced earlier in terms of what we heard from the public.
Okay, so just a final comment then is that, and maybe question it is if this is seen as sort of a medium-term kind of thing, and we decided in 5 or 10 years from now that we needed to expand the ACUCC, this would, the design of this is such that we could make that decision without some significant changes. We wouldn't now have to be, tearing out a bunch of trees and a bunch of permanent structure. We would do, this is meant to be, as you say, medium term.
And that's correct. There was a good comment made about the nature of trees. Trees can become permanent, so perhaps it should not be trees, but should be a hedge or something that's considered to be ground cover. That'll come back in the detailed design in terms of what we're trying to achieve, because we don't want to create anything of long-term permanence here. We want to make sure that it's viewed as we view the downtown Aldergrove core as being something that needs some revitalization, and this is just the entrance for that period of time within which that we can begin that. We're very hopeful that the Aldergrove Mall site will begin to be a further catalyst with the parkade that's going in there, but that could create the need for additional parking spaces, which may only be satisfied by a parkade or a mixed-use development.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Long?
You have to really, put your mind way back to 2010 when the Aldergrove core plan was developed. It was a great plan, but it sat for quite a while before anything happened with it. And the gateway was always imagined there, from what I can recall, and I was on the committee when it happened. This is an expansion of ACUCC. There's no way that you would be putting a building on the corner of this lot. If you want to expand the services that are provided by the community center, you would do this kind of a thing, I would think. I don't think we're going to have buildings right up to the curb. If you wanted to expand the building, which I don't know why we would need that at the moment, perhaps somewhere in the future we might, it would likely expand more to the east and to the south. I don't think you would be expanding the footprint of the building to the northwest, which is where this is being proposed. This actually is an expansion, in my mind, of the ACUCC because it's providing an open space and it's providing a gateway and a welcoming spot to the very, very popular community center as it is, as well as the outdoor adventure. If you look on page 4, it talks about the plan happening in 2010. So it's not surprised maybe that some on the council here don't recall that in detail, and I don't have all the details in front of me either, other than gateway was a big word that was used. And we have built this interim one in the parking lot of where the Alder Inn was, and anyone that was there on the weekend can see how very successful that was. Thousands of people frequented the downtown, and many, many hundreds came to that what we call the plaza, which is just a parking lot with a few umbrellas in it. And we managed, the community transformed it into a gathering place, and it was extremely successful. So I think that has been proven now on many an occasion that a gathering spot in the center of town is desirable. And as Mr. Backen has said, the timing of this would be such that when that lot develops, and certainly all of council agreed that the 272nd and Fraser High would be a good spot for some development, even though I like the hotel anyway. Then we need to transition to another spot, and this is the one that was pointed out in 2010. Also on page 4, you'll see that what the CCRF is. The Canada Community Revitalization Fund is specifically for projects that revitalize downtown cores on Main Street. Well, that is a main street, and that is the downtown core, and we certainly have been trying to focus on revitalization for Aldergrove for many, many years. Projects that reinvent outdoor spaces. So this is an outdoor space. This is what this grant is being prescribed for. Projects that create green infrastructure. Well, that's the trees. Mr. Backen, please, let's not get rid of the trees. They can always be transplanted one day, but maybe they'll just grow there and be fine. And projects that increase the accessibility of common community spaces. So as I go back to my original comment, this is, in my mind, an expansion of ACUCC because it expands the accessibility to that facility. People were always saying they would like some more parking. There's more parking in this. I think staff have done a great job of taking advantage of an initiative to get some community grants. And I think it's also been said that if council wanted to muck a little bit with the design, there's still some time with that perhaps, but I think we should be passing this, and I hope council will, so that we can get the funding. And I don't think there's a better project that we can think of. We have a half-built situation now. Those buildings, they've been vacated. They sit kind of derelict at the moment. They have to come down because there's no tenants there. There's some issues with the buildings. It is the gateway to the ACUCC. I think this is an ideal project. I do understand council's concern that it's kind of come quickly and maybe unexpectedly. I certainly was surprised when I saw it too, but I'm surprised in a very positive way. So I hope that council will support that, and let's get some funds. Let's get the CCRF funding, which is specifically for COVID recovery. So if we pass this one up, I don't think it's going to be available in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, indeed. There were quite a few people there for the parade there on Saturday, and that's always positive that people are supporting the community, and also that the weather held out. So it was a very, very good opportunity for all of us. So, I mean, that begs the question, if we're going to have an awful lot of people participate in events, it would be good for council to do as other members of council said, get some more input and find out what would be nothing short of an excellent community endorsed and community supported project. So that's where the challenge is with myself and other members of council. Not the fact that we don't want good services or good facilities in Alder, which we do want. We just want the right ones supported by the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I had a couple more questions through the staff, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So what was the deadline for this grant? That was mentioned that we'd already applied for it. What was the deadline? When was that application made?
Mr. Chapman, when was the
Sorry.
application made?
I believe our application was made July 31st or the end of July.
Okay. Appreciate that. So my sort of concern there, thoughts around this is it's designed somewhere over the summer, submitted in July, and I'm learning of it with 2 days to go. I have 2 days to think about this or look at it and decide, okay, what are the ramifications of this? I really don't think that's right or fair. I'm just going to have to say it like it is. And the other thing, too, is I had a question about the terms of the grant, such that if it's approved by council today and it proceeds, what are the terms about how many years do we have to wait before we can remove it, before we have to return the money?
Your Worship, I don't think that's been contemplated. I think what Mr. Beckham was referencing earlier was an essential component that is inherent in grants that are being dispersed by the provincial government, as was referenced by Councillor Long in terms of the conditions, the COVID context under which the grants are being offered. So the question from Councillor Woodward, I don't think there's a specific answer to. It's just inherent that when grants are being again dispersed to communities, that they're being used for infrastructure or amenities that are not temporary. That is the basis under which we are operating.
Okay, so I had just a few more comments here. This will be my last time to speak on the motion. So, I think for me, it's a pretty simple question. This is not my particular thought of what we would do with that property at the ACUCC for the next 5 to 10 years. Parking lot, 17 trees, and a little meeting space. That's not my thought of what we do at that corner for the ACUCC for that period of time. We've been chatting a bit, so the members of council and senior management about what does an ACUC expansion look like? What are the ideas for that? How are we going to pay for that? We actually do want to put buildings right up to the sidewalk, actually, with potentially some retail components, maybe some mixed-use components. What are we trying to achieve at the ACUCC? And to me, it's not 17 trees and some more parking. And I'm in a quandary here because I don't want to say that I don't like the effort to try to get grant funding. Of course we do. But the time to have this discussion was actually back in July, not in December. And so I don't support it, and I don't support $250,000 of township funding going towards this, whether it's in the DCC programming or not. I would love to talk about a better vision for the ACUCC than this, that involves an expansion of additional rec facilities and amenities, retail, which we need, and some mixed uses, along with some parking capacity that, of course, we need there. Not this plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Davis.
Thank you. It's sketchy. Thank you. I remember I voted to buy this piece of property, and it was all along it was to add to the swimming pool and the hockey arena. But it did, and I'm not trying to be negative, but it just did come up. And I would have thought that maybe we would have, hey, I don't know if it's what we want to see there, because it definitely does add for parking. But I am a little bit nervous about investing that kind of money and for 10 years. So I don't know if, you know, maybe, I know it's a lot of money that we're going to lose, but it, do we take a second sober look? And yeah, I just, we knew it was all coming. Like, well, I did, no, I'm going to put words in my mouth. I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth. We did buy that piece of property to add to this and to enhance the pool. And this seems like it, this is not an argument, I don't want to, but to put buildings right out to the road and to up the value of it is a good thing. But is it what we bought that for an expansion? And I am concerned because maybe we should take a second sober look at the, I'm not suggesting that we were all drunk when we wrote this down on the plan, okay? But it would be, yeah, I'm feeling myself, I haven't really looked at it a heck of a lot because that is a real big piece of that's a big piece of the puzzle. I guess I'm just comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Davis. I'm having real difficulty putting a plaza in there that we're going to rip out in 10 years' time. That doesn't make sense, because over 10 years, people will have gotten used to having a plaza there, and either it's going to stay there. Plus, I'm sure the intent of the federal funding is that it not be ripped out after 10 years. And if we do rip it out after 10 years, are we handicapping ourselves for future grants in this area? Now, I have a question relative to the motion. The last part of the motion says that council authorized staff to execute the funding agreement should the grant funding application be successful. If we do this and we're not successful, can we just shelve this idea and bring it up in a more comprehensive, holistic review of the area for future needs there? Because one of the things we could use this land for too is affordable housing. It'd be a perfect location for affordable housing. And I just don't want to get locked into widening Fraser Highway and putting a plaza here if we don't get the grant monies. And I'm afraid if we pass this tonight, that's what we're locking ourselves into going forward. So can we shelve this idea if we don't get approval on the grants?
Your Worship, I'll jump in. Yeah, that's correct. The process to proceed is we've got budget authority subject to the grant money coming in. If the grant money does not come in, then we don't proceed. Now that would apply to the plaza. The roadway is a bit of a different project. It was being done here concurrently, but I guess I would venture to say that if the plaza did not proceed, then we wouldn't be in a rush to do the roadway either at that point, because it's being funded by the township in concurrent with the construction. So the short answer is then if this wasn't to receive the grant funding, the plaza wouldn't proceed, and I think we would simply revert the road project then back to the regular capital program.
Yeah, well, I still don't understand why, if we're trying to create a pedestrian-friendly, walkable community, which we're trying to create, why we would want to double Fraser Highway at that point, particularly when we spent the money that we did in order to put a light in there and to narrow the traffic down to one lane, the traffic calming. So I'm just not getting the overall plan here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll wade in now. I know there's members of council that for them, it's not their thought for that corner. It's always been my thought for that corner that there'd be a proper plaza put in place. I've traveled, and as many of us have traveled many different cities in the world, and we see some beautiful plazas they have in their city centers and their town centers, and we seem to lack that. Some may want to put a multi-story, multi-use building in that corner right beside a recreation center. I think that's, I think a plaza is much a better use, and we have other areas where we can put multi-story buildings, multi-use buildings. This is an opportunity, as staff has said, we have people, staff has said this is an opportunity that they've applied based on what they've heard from Alder and goes back to 2010, and I know that there's some plans being done way back then on how to improve these corners. Things evolve. I'd hate to see this money go, but it's going to be up to council. And I hope that we can, once we've done this conversation, that we'll go to vote and then council decide whether they want or not. And I think that'll be the will of council. But it should go to vote so staff have clear direction on which direction they should go. And we have asked staff to look at opportunities for funding grants in any way that they possibly can. And I appreciate the fact that they've done it in this case and they brought it to us. And I don't find 2 days a burden on reading a report. It's pretty straightforward. I had a chance to talk to Mr. Backen about it. I got all the information I needed. I don't need to defer this. This is pretty straightforward. Either we want to move forward with it, get something in that place instead of derelict buildings, or let it go, and then perhaps staff will carry on and look for another granting opportunity. But I think this is something that I really would like to support and see something good being done for Aldergrove. I'll go on to Councillor Whitmarsh and Councillor Long, and hopefully we can ask the question then. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, it does appear to have come very quickly, and the idea of it came quite fast in our package here, and we're trying to decide what to do. You know, but the fact that it's sort of a more medium timing, I'm more open to the idea of it. You know, I don't think we're going to be developing in the next 2 to 3 years. It's probably in that 5 to 7 range. We do have a piece of property on 272 and Fraser Highway that we have sitting there. At some point, we've talked about as a council seeing that develop. And so, in light of that, and I think widening of the road in front of the ACUCC is probably a good thing. And I do think it needs some open space, and the fact that we can look at it later. For me today, I'm going to support this, even though I don't like that it came so quickly. It would have been nice to have this discussion back in September, beginning of September, and have more time. But regardless of that, I'm going to support it.
Councillor Long.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I hope that the rest of council would consider it too. And I just wanted to, you know, to talk about this idea that staff have come out of this at the last minute. The direction was given in 2010. So I'm sorry that we've forgotten about that. Time goes by and maybe this council didn't see that as a priority, but it certainly was a priority in 2010. And there was a massive amount of community input given when that Aldergrove Downtown Core Plan was developed. There was a lot of time has gone by, 2010 to 2021, but that doesn't mean that the plan did not have public input. Public input was given, and a public plaza was signified for that location. And then we popped up this other plaza because of the demolition of the Alder Inn. And again, I think in defense of staff, council needs to realize that we went out for public consultation as to what that plaza or what that space could look like. And staff have based the creation of this plaza on that input. So we've had public input. We've had a plan in place for 11 years. Yes, it's coming to us fast because of some grant applications. And may I remind you again that this grant is strictly a COVID grant that's come out. So it wasn't anticipated either. So we're taking advantage of something that's come rather quickly. There's some funds available. Outdoor spaces are very important. And I think that this plaza will be very complementary to the ACUCC. So I hope that we do get some support from council tonight. I certainly am supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Oh, thank you, Worship. It's really quite a conundrum. I mean, for those of us who would like to see some amenity as opposed to sort of derelict buildings, I really don't see that we should be in a situation where we're saying either or. I can understand if this has been part of the plan since 2010, but that was 11 years ago. And really, a lot of things happen. And I always thought that the Aldergrove Downtown Plan, we certainly changed, I believe, some of the elements of the plan since then. It's not carved in stone. I see this as an opportunity, but I'm very reluctant to say yes to something that's going to take significant investment only to have it as an interim use. So I'm not against a plaza, but I really would have preferred to have some more time to have some kind of policy debate about whether or not we've actually shifted our focus and determination and could have used this money somewhere else. Of course, it would be nice in Aldergrove, but is it really it reminds me of going out on a date on Saturday night and I've left it till Saturday morning to get a dress, and I'm not finding one that fits very well, and I'm frustrated because I want to be able to go out. But on the other hand, maybe I shouldn't be wearing the thing that's only left to me now. So this is not a critique of staff. This is just a timing issue, and I really think that, you know, we need to be prudent with the way that we're spending our money. And if it's something that we really don't 100% buy into, you know, if it's not 100% yes, maybe it should be 100% no, at least for now.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bracken, perhaps you could just, before we decide on a $750,000 grant, which I think is quite a bonus for the township, perhaps you can enlighten us on where we are right now, and then I'll call the question.
Not so much to enlighten your worship, but just to point out that if there is not thought to be any long-term utility or medium-term utility to this, the township is still spending money in this as a co-venture with the grant funders. I think staff really felt that this was going to be something that would advance the cause of the core in that midterm. But if that's not the way council feels, that's certainly the advice we need to have going forward, because this is trying to cope with some of those grant opportunities that come and go in this very different environment than we're used to for some time. So if this does not meet council's needs, I would encourage council then simply to advise us of that. There's also the perspective of having a deeply divided council and a vote with a grant application going forward. That also is not necessarily the best thing for us as well. So, some further opportunities may come along that these funds could be applied to. If this does represent the majority of council's will, that's fine as well. But we really would prefer to see more of a cohesive front in terms of going with the grant funders. And I just put that query out there. If there's something here that doesn't meet our intermediate needs, then I think we should simply go in a different direction.
Okay, thank you. So just following up on that, so if council was to turn this down, staff can still pursue other opportunities with this grant if there's time permitting.
I think it would simply be other opportunities within the envelope. Yep. As has been referenced, there's been some timelines we've had to follow, and the timelines are usually, when a grant is announced, you usually put a placeholder in, and then you try to find out some things that'll fit that, because most parties don't have turnkey projects ready, especially after the COVID pass we've experienced.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Woodard, if you, as long as this to make another type of motion, go ahead, but not to speak to it.
It is, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move deferral for one council meeting.
So, sorry, I didn't hear that.
Deferral.
Councilor Woodard moves deferral.
Absolutely. Yep. I'll support.
Okay, and Councilor Davis seconds it.
Based on Mr. Bracken's input just a second ago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Davis, sorry, Councilor Woodard, did you wish to speak? Or hands still up? Okay, Councilor Davis.
I think that's exactly what I needed. I've heard a million times, if I've heard it once, oh, you spent all that money and you tore it out. Or like, oh, you paved the road and then a month or 2 years later, you're tearing it up again, putting all, and so I'm absolutely glad that I wish I'd thought of that myself for one meeting, because I really think I need to think about this. As the reasons I said before, if I defer it for our next meeting is when? January 10th. That's a ways away. But is that going to take away any opportunity for the grants? Like, will that kind of screw us up?
Your Worship, I think it makes it more challenging because, of course, there's then 60 days, not 90 days, to begin to advance things. But I think realistically, if we're advancing something that doesn't have a broad base of support, it's not likely to be successful anyways. So I think we're better to have this thought and get some comments, if this is to proceed, to have some comments that would have a design that better reflects what Council's vision is, whether it be for a 5 or 10 year term, hopefully not that long. But again, the grant funders certainly look for issues where there's unanimity as opposed to division, and I think that's something we can strive to eliminate, that being the division.
That's right, and we bought the piece of property, Mr. Winsley or Mayor. We actually haven't owned it since 2010. We actually bought it, was it 6.5, 7 years ago? I forget. But, so, you know, I know that anyhow, you know what, I'm just going on. I'm getting hungry, so maybe it's just a comment, but I know that I'm not trying to start an argument with Councillor Long, but I know it's been in the works, but we actually only have owned the property, we haven't owned it since 2010. Yeah, that's right, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Richter.
I still don't understand why we want to put a park in that we're going to rip out in 10 years. That's crazy nonsense. I disagree with planting trees to kill them 10 years
It's on
down
the
the
deferral.
road. Yeah, well, it is about the deferral, and I think we're just wasting our time on a deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
That we're going to rip it out in 10 years. I don't understand where that conversation, it's not in the report anywhere that we're going to build something that we're going to rip out. In fact, if you want to continue to say that, we won't be getting the grant at all, because that's not, they don't give you grants so you can rip stuff out. I mean, I guess the discussion point was, well, anything can happen in 10 years, and certainly anything can happen in 10 years. And here's a good example. 10 years ago, we had a plan for downtown Aldergrove, and 10 years later, we're all changing our mind on it. And talk about putting staff in a bad position. If you defer this to January, that only gives, we're supposed to have it substantially built by March, so that cuts way back on the timing to get that thing put in. And there's continual talk about all this money that the taxpayers are putting in. According to the chart that I have, there's $250,000 worth of DCCs, which is going to go towards improving the parking and the walkability of downtown Aldergrove. It's not taxpayers' money. $750,000 coming from the grant. So this is not tax monies that we're wasting or spending.
So just on the deferral.
It's DCC.
Just
well,
on the deferral.
The deferral is going to cause more issues with this project. Council, just vote for it or don't.
Thank you. Councillor, Councillor Woodward's next.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, actually, DCCs are taxpayer money, Councillor Long. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is, I think that what I'm hearing around the table is that we need a bit more time. I wasn't me who brought this forward with 2 days to despair, and I still want more time. I want to understand a bit more logic and have a few more questions with management over it. So the deferral to me is valuable, and I think I'm hearing that it's valuable to some others. What I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is on the deferral that this was a condition of the grant, which was applied for months ago, and it would be seen more favorably, not a fatal. So I think I'm listening to the administrator, and it sounds to me like a consensus rather than a 5-4 is something that we need to work towards. I think what this is doing is forcing a conversation for that property, and I think we should take one council meeting over Christmas and think, what is our vision for the ACUCC? This has been sprung on me. But I've been asking about that for 3 years, Councillor Long. What are we trying to achieve at the ACUCC? And to me, it's not a parking lot and 17 trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to support this, and I really like the idea of having a plaza. And I think even if it's something that's short term, I actually think that the community in Aldergrove is going to really want to have a plaza, especially as, I mean, I was there the other night and it was buzzing. It was really cool. And so as much as I know this is sort of dropped on us, I'll support a deferral, but I'm actually would like to support this idea of you know, we're getting some grant money to do something that I think the community really wants. And I think Aldergrove really needs a community gathering place. And I you know, so I'm in support of this grant money.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to say I'm not in support of the deferral. I got this agenda report at the same time everybody else did. I read it, I understand it, and we need to start making decisions and stop referring everything to the next meeting. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Mayor Froese, Councillor Long, Councillor Whitmarsh opposed. It carries. All right, we move on to number 5, banner program request for expressions of interest. Could I have a motion, please? Hope everybody read the report. Oh, Councillor Woodward, do you have to step out? Okay.
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, are we clear? Yes. I can now ask for a motion for number 5. Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Davis. Councillor, any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor Froese,
Oh,
Councillor Davis
yes.
did want to speak.
Oh, okay, I didn't see a hand up.
Said something.
Okay, Councillor Davis did.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm muddling things up. It's just Councillor Arneson was saying something.
Okay, I saw her hand. Just I should.
Okay, I'll just be quiet now. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, I will recall the vote. Councillor Arneson, go ahead. You have your opportunity to speak. I didn't see you come up.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. It's not going to change my vote, but further to the staff report, I had been speaking to Mr. Tillamello earlier, and I just wanted to clarify that in the report, when it talks about the disposition of these banners, that in fact there were a number of different items that went to different community groups. I don't think we need to get in that now. It's just that the Fort Langley FLBIA, to use the acronym, did, administratively give the banners over, and now we're trying to just go back to a system where we can rationalize the fact and make it into a 5-year term and go through a process which we always envisioned in the first place. So it's more or less just to, sort of correct what happened, but not the fact that, the community association was, doing something untoward. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'll call the question again. All those in favor? And any opposed? It carries unanimously. All right, I'll ask Councillor Woodward to come back in. Councillor Arneson, your hand is still up. All right, move on to number 6, the mail-in ballot option for 2022 local general election. And thank you, Ms. Bauer, for your report. I would ask for a motion. Somebody wishes to move this. Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Davis. Councillor Woodward, did you wish to speak to it as a mover? I thought you might want to. Go ahead if you wish.
I have a question. So we're moving the council consider a vote. So I mean, maybe we should move, or I can amend this to a one direction, one way or the other.
Yeah, that's what I thought you're doing. Okay, maybe you could just clarify your
So I'll
motion.
clarify what I was moving. I was moving that that council adopt a vote by mail option for
thank
voters.
you.
Yep.
Thank you. That's kind of what I expected. Yeah, thanks. We got Councillor Arneson. Director Woodward. Okay, Councillor Arneson.
I'm not functioning at the moment. We need some technical assistance.
Oh, okay.
Mayor Froese, we have the situation result.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Councillor Arneson.
Sorry, I took my hand down. Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll go to Councilor Richter.
Yeah, I was just on page 3 of the report. It's actually also on page 1, but it says that the mail-in ballot costs were $15.39 per voter. And was this number based solely on the 1,930 votes for the school district by-election in February?
Ms. Bauer.
It is based on an estimate if we had the same percentage of the voters coming that we would normally have. So the school district was approximately 3%. I based it on a 30% turnout for the election, which is what we normally get for a local election. So if the numbers actually climb significantly, it would drop per cost per vote. But I'm erring on the side of keeping apples to apples and comparing them.
So you're anticipating that the percentage of the percentage of votes cast by mail will mirror the percentage that we saw in February.
Yes, that's
But
right.
there's no guarantees that could happen.
There is absolutely no guarantees either way. I just had to come up with a statistical comparison.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Davis.
There we go. There, thank you. I that was exactly my same question.
Okay.
That seems like $15 a voter. I think that this is something that maybe we need because there's certain people that, well, maybe I'm one of them, that I don't want to, if we look at other ways to vote, I like to go in and say, well, I voted, but I don't know if electronically voting from my house is what is for me. But if I can drop a letter in the mailbox and put a 39-cent stamp on it, I will too. That's to show you how old-fashioned I am. But I think I would support this. Over.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Woodridge.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, I appreciated the staff report and those comparisons. I certainly sympathize with that. With the provincial election, however, I believe it was over 10,000 that utilized a mail-in ballot, if I recall. So, for me, there's one, which is the by-election, very low turnout, very little interest from the public versus the provincial election. Maybe we'll fall somewhere in between. Maybe we can get it up to 5 or 8,000. The other thing I've got some concerns about is the unpredictability of the pandemic. There's no way to know what the pandemic's going to look like 10 months from now. And it seems like we have to do this relatively soon. We can't come back in September and say, oh yeah, the pandemic's really bad again. And so I think we got to do it now. That's my feeling, just to save the option for the pandemic in the future, given even with Omicron, again, it changes by the week or the month. So for me, I think this is something we have to offer people based upon preserving safety and pandemic protocols, whatever they may be at that time. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson.
I think things have changed quite a bit, and I know that it's not inexpensive. It is a challenge, but I think that democracy is important in getting the vote to as many people as possible. The opportunity to exercise their franchise is very, very important. Councillor Davis, I don't think it's 39 cents to mail a letter anymore. I think it's close to, I think it's Alder, I think now. Anyway, what I wanted to point out is the fact that some people, they just don't want to go and stand in line and vote. And they say, well, there's an opportunity to go to an advanced poll. No, I don't want to stand in line at an advanced poll. I just don't want to go. Okay, here's an opportunity for those people, and there seems to be many of them because not everybody votes in the community. Another opportunity, just put it in the mail, request it and put it in the mail, or put it wherever you put it. And there's another voter that normally wouldn't votes. Pandemic and all this other stuff aside, I think it's an opportunity for some people to vote that haven't voted in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Arneson.
Yes, Thank you, Worship. Weighing and balancing these issues is a bit of a challenge. One wants to feel that we're advancing democracy by allowing more people to vote. But then, is this actually going to achieve that outcome is the uncertainty that I struggle with. Because to me, you know, and it may be an estimate, there has to be some way, though, to account for costing. If it were the fact it was $15, would we still feel the same way if it was $50 a vote? I mean, if a principle is a principle, it shouldn't really matter to us how much it is. It's just the fact of we want people to come out to vote. And I understand that there's a lot of uncertainty around what will happen with the pandemic, but we'd had a number of successful votes during the pandemic. Some of them did have mail-in ballots, and I feel that maybe people don't want to stand and wait in line for an advanced polling opportunity. But to me, unfortunately, I would personally rather take the $15 and invest it in education and promotion to get more people just to vote in general, because in fact we have relatively low turnout for local government elections. So I'm not necessarily certain that this will achieve what we want, and I guess it's just a matter of, do you have faith that allowing this to take place will actually make a big difference? You know, maybe some people think if even one more person voted, it would be worth the investment. But I also note in the staff report, there's other technological issues that we will have to look into, and there's no costing there for that either. So I don't think at this time I'm going to be supportive of that because those are, you know, reasons that I think we can do workarounds, but not necessarily have to, you know, pay for extra infrastructure and this costing for maybe a marginal uptake of people voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? There's my hand. Mayor Frozen, Councilor Arneson, opposed. It carries. And so now we move on. Let's see, we're getting down to how fast we can get through the reports. And we'll have to break.
Point of order?
Point of order?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Your worship, we're about a quarter way through the meeting and we have an in-camera meeting. We're going to have to convene
Yes.
after the public hearing. In order to do a good job of the public hearing, I move what do we do? Recess right now, or what's the word?
Or
Adjourn.
Adjourn until after the public
Yeah,
hearing. Is that
and the
your
public
motion?
hearing shouldn't be too long, but that's my motion.
Okay, and is there a seconder? Councilor Kunst. Okay, Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we've got 20 more minutes. Why are we not using it? I don't really understand where this is coming from.
Well, because we need some time.
Why would we want to be here 20 minutes
Okay,
later?
okay. We either you're for or against it. We'll have a
Ridiculous.
vote. It's a simple vote.
ridiculous.
I think we'll be here 2
okay.
hours later if you don't adjourn
Thank-
now.
Excuse me. This is a vote of council. It doesn't require
I didn't know my microphone.
huge discussion. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, opposed to adjourning. So we have Councilor Ferguson, Councilor Davis, Councilor Woodward, Councilor Arneson. So it carries. So we'll adjourn until after the public hearing. Thank you. Have a nice dinner.
Mayor Froze, when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll now reconvene the regular council meeting, Township Langley Council, and we will continue with reports to council, and we're on to E7, and this is a report for to be received for information. It's Strata Road, 207 A Street, 82 to 84 Avenues. Could I have a motion to receive? Councilor Long, second by Councilor Woodward, and Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question here. When 207A was originally designed, was it intended at that point to be a school access road?
Last staff, Mr. Seffi.
Your Worship, I don't know if I would identify 207 A Street as a school access road, but certainly the location of the school, actually in plural, I would say the schools, because as far as the Yorkshire Neighborhood Plan is concerned, which was adopted by Council in 2001, there was an elementary school site as well as a middle school anticipated in that area. So even though the locations were not specific. When you look at the asterisks that were used in the neighborhood plan, and I can share some slides with council at your direction, Your Worship, you will see that as far back as 2001, the schools were identified as being in that location, general area.
In the general area, but not necessarily. Because schools generate a lot of traffic every day, and particularly morning and afternoon. And perhaps 207A wasn't intended at the time that it was approved to be used for school access to the extent that it is currently being used for school access. And I think perhaps the extent of school access that it's providing is what's creating hardship for the strata owners there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Woodward?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I just wanted to advise you, I think the receipt motion is what we're currently debating, asking questions on. When this is disposed of, I would like to remove the original motion on page 2. Just want to give you a heads up on that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor David? All right. Councilor Davis? On the receipt and on the report, if you have a question on the report. Okay.
On receipt, yeah,
And on the report.
Okay, if if this were to become a Township of Langley operated road, is there anything about this road that we'd have to spend money on? Because when you drive down that road, like almost right off the road, are accesses to public parking, or private parking, but is there anything about this road that we may not, like in 10 years from now, say, well, that's not updated, we're gonna have to update it and spend money on, that we can't see today if we take that road ownership over? Maybe a question through to Mr. Backham, through Mayor Froese. Jack, I don't think I can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, hang on.
Mayor Froese.
So I don't know if it's Mr. Backen or Mr. Sefi can answer that.
Your Worship, thank you. I'll start, and Mr. Backen can add to my comments. Your Worship, the road was designed and constructed not in accordance with the municipal requirements. What I mean by that is that it's not the standard width, nor is it the standard construction standard, the construction depth, because it was always contemplated and implemented as a private strata road. So in terms of, I guess, beyond the operating and maintenance requirements, the typical O&M, as we call them, I would suggest that there is going to be rehabilitation, so OM and R. In terms of costs, then one would look at, I guess, the costs for maintenance in terms of an annual cost, whether it's landscaping or other aspects, pothole repair, signage, snow clearing, things of that nature. Beyond that, then certainly if this was to be adopted, there would be rehabilitation costs as far as, I guess, a local road condition is concerned, because we don't know what a depth that it was constructed at is. Well, we do, but it was based on the building code as opposed to the municipal subdivision development servicing bylaw.
So why, I guess maybe just a thought, but why, or a good question, why would we want to take that incurred cost on?
That's up to council, I guess.
That's up to council, okay.
Yeah.
We don't even know that, do we? We don't even know the cost of what it would be to bring it up to speed, because it'd be a tough nut to get snow out of there. You know, it's like everything about that road is, it's a nice road to drive into your home, but it's, as a public road, it could cost us a lot of money. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship to Mr. Safey. I had two questions, and the first one, I was just triggered by something that you said, because I'm not sure if we're aware, but I'm wondering if we are building a public road, the standard that we use, I imagine would be different than for a semi-private road, I'm going to call it, because I think it was always assumed that there would be some public access, but not necessarily the volume that we're looking at now. But I just wondered about the standard to which such a road would be built, because it seems like you'd have to build it to a higher standard if you had more anticipated traffic on it, and that we would be held to that standard should we make it a public road. Would that be a fair statement?
Mr. Safi?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify, I guess, what was stated earlier. Your Worship, there are I guess, two types of roads, generally speaking, private and public. Private roads are typically constructed in accordance with the British Columbia Building Code. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not as strong, I guess, as a municipal standard road, which typically requires a higher standard. I apologize for using the word standard so many times. It requires a higher standard based on the fact that the public purse is responsible for its maintenance, as opposed to the users, which are more, I guess, smaller group in their nature, in their scope. It serves a smaller area. So private roads are narrower, and the inspection process for the construction of a private road is not as strenuous as the inspection program and the standards required for construction of a public road.
Okay, thank you for that. I recognize in the past, some of us might recall that there have always, I believe, been issues on the use of this roadway, but a lot of them had to do with internal use, so that there were garbage trucks and other utility vehicles that would have to go through there, as well as concerns about getting out from the underground parking and the safety of that. So those are other issues, and I'm not sure what kind of impact that would have. Secondly, I was wondering whether or not the township had considered a very simplistic way to address this to see if it was helpful. So I know the staff report said that there were speed bumps in the area. However, I wondered what about the applicability of a local traffic only signage on either end of the roadway, just to signal the public that it's not meant to be a thoroughfare. I'm not suggesting that it would deter everybody, but since there's nothing there, I think it might be of some confusion to individuals who are now entering that roadway with the intention of finding a shorter route or something quicker to where they're going relative to the schools. But if it said local traffic only, I just wondered if that might be a relatively inexpensive, an intermediary approach, rather than considering, making this into a public road per se.
Mr. Safi, any comments on that, on signage?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I guess a couple of comments. The first one is that, as perhaps Council is aware, there is a right-of-way over the private road that provides for public access, and that was considered and negotiated in the early 2000s after the Yorkshire Plan was adopted, when the application for development was submitted, based on the fact that the need for public access was identified. And the advantage of not having the public be responsible for maintenance of the road was also identified. So it was something that was negotiated at that time. So I guess by putting, subject to council's direction, certainly is something that could be done, but it would be in essence contradicting the legal documents, the instruments that are in place, which provides for public access. And I take it by the comments from Councillor Arneson that should such a signage be provided, the intent would be to not necessarily prevent pedestrian access, but rather vehicular access. So that would create a bit of a challenge in terms of the enforcement of such a sign regime. And the other comment I had, Your Worship, is that there is underground utilities that I guess, are invisible, obviously because they're underground, but there needs to be the ability for the public, i.e. the township, to access that and be able to undertake works on those because they are public utilities under a private road.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the whole idea of precedent here. I said earlier, and I do believe this, I think there is an inequity here because of the schools using it as an access road for them. And that's generating a much higher volume of traffic than was ever contemplated when this original arrangement was worked out. So how many other developments are in a similar situation? So if we decided to say, okay, you know what, we probably shouldn't have done this in the first place. It was a mistake because there is too much public access on it or too much public traffic. But because there is so much public traffic, we should pay for it. And how many other developments would be affected if we took this road over? I'm trying to get a handle on how many more of these have we allowed to be built in the township.
Mr. Seffi? I know there are
Thank you, Your Worship.
access roads on a lot of developments that are owned by the strata or by the development that public have access to. That's all over the township. Mr. Seffi can maybe
That's
provide
correct, Your
more
Worship.
detail.
I think it would be fair to say that with every multifamily application that is approved by council, there is typically, I would suggest 90% of the time, a private road typically constructed that's required. I don't know if I can guesstimate how many of those are typically or generally speaking have a public right-of-way over them, but I would suggest that it's a significant amount. In fact, in this particular area, south of 82nd Avenue, I believe the subject of the discussion is currently 82nd to 84th, but further south between 80th and 82nd, even though the road jogs somewhat, 207 A Street is actually slightly west of the alignment on the north side of 82nd Avenue, but that also is a private road. So it happens quite frequently. And I guess in terms of how people access certain destination points, such as parks or schools, is something that is foremost in staff's mind in terms of how it's one of the decision factors as to how a development is presented to council, because, as I said, it's one of the considerations. Other considerations are obviously the bylaws, policies adopted by council, and then how adjacent properties might be affected. Often staff goes through a very strenuous process of making sure that no property is affected by the development of an adjacent property. So all those things, public access, whether it's private, whether it's vehicular or pedestrian, contiguity, all of these things are considered when applications are brought forward for council consideration. And I guess in terms of the specific question that Councillor Richter is asking, I suggest it happens quite frequently. I just don't have a list in front of me that I can share with council.
Okay, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is this is clearly a case of unintended consequences that have come home to roost down the road. In trying to follow in the footsteps of Councillor Arneson looking for a simpler solution, it would seem to me that the simpler solution is to reduce the volume of school traffic on that road. Now, is that possible? Is that something that we've talked to the school board or the school district about? Can traffic be rerouted off that road from the schools?
Your Worship, I take it you'd like staff to respond?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have an answer for it, but perhaps you'd be better to respond. Thank you.
Your Worship, in terms of, I guess, in theory, I would suggest, yes, it can be done. In actual practice, though, I think one must take a look at the enforceability of such a provision. It has not been discussed with the school district, so it's something that we would have to obviously discuss with the school district. And as I said, the more important matter that maybe should be discussed or considered by council would be how it would be actually enforced, because it's going to take some enforcement because it won't be universally followed or observed as a requirement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I don't know if you could enforce it anyway, because it's not a public road per se. So I don't know if enforcement would really be our job. I'm just wondering why we couldn't put up or allow the strata to put up a sign that says local traffic only, which doesn't mean it doesn't say private road, doesn't say no public access. It just says local traffic, which could be anybody. So that might deter some of the traffic that's going down. The second thing, I'm not sure why the strata wouldn't put speed bumps. Have they asked us if they could put speed bumps? Maybe we could cost share on speed bumps. That would probably deter some people going down there. But, I don't want to say too much about what the strata's up to, but I know that I've been a strata chair for a number of years, and I think that they're looking at, getting out of the road business because it's inconvenient for them and it's going to be costly, but that is part of the deal that was originally made. So perhaps there's some ways that we can deter traffic going down there, or they could, as the strata, by putting up a local-only sign or a service road sign, perhaps, and some speed bumps. But the report that we're discussing clearly does not recommend that we take the road over, and I'm glad that somebody brought up the ramifications of doing so, because I think our strata would like it to be the road to be taken over. It's full of potholes where I live. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've entered the world of strata a year ago, and certainly we have to take care of our roads. I have a question on the report. It mentions something about the park. There's a parkade, or a portion of the parkade that's directly underneath this road. Is that correct, Mr. Sefi?
Your Worship, the right-of-way documents that were negotiated and registered on title, 2009, 2010 era, they did contemplate a encroachment, if you will, underground encroachment of the parkade within the road. That is something that I cannot, at this point, until staff does further investigation, I cannot verify whether it was constructed in that manner or not, but it did. The right-of-way documents do provide for underground construction of the parkade below the road to some extent. Okay. But at this point, I cannot verify until we have some discussions with the original developer or have a discussion with the strata and get some surveys done, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Based on the fact that this report came from the original notice of motion, I'd like to remove the notice of motion as on page 2. Now that we've got the staff report, referred for staff report, I'd like to get that back on the floor, please.
Okay, so first I have to ask the question for receipt. We'll dispense that. So I'll ask the question. Those in favor of receipt and opposed, that carries. Thank you. So Councilor Woodward, if you wish to
that
make
motion, it's on page 2. I'd like to remove that, please.
I'll second for discussion.
I'm sorry, you remove it. I don't understand. You wish to move it.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved.
Before, so I'm moving it again.
Yes, thanks. Moved and seconded by Councilor Richter. Councilor Woodward, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the staff report. I think that was helpful to document the process. I look at the photo on page 2 with the purple dash marks on it. And from a plan point of view, with the school there and apartment buildings to one side, if you're going to be heading up that direction north-south, it's pretty clear you're not going to go all the way to 208 and then come back again, that you're going to use this road. So to me, it's pretty simple. It looks like a road. It's used as a road. It's signed as a road. So to me, it's a road, and I think we should take it back. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? So I'll put my 2 bits in. I don't think we should take it back. I think there was a very clear decision made and negotiated with the original developer, and the strata's taken over it. I've seen this over the last 10 years, the questions of why, and as noted, there are many developments in the Township of Langley which have roads that are owned and operated and maintained by the strata. I don't think this is any different. It was an opportunity for this complex to be built, and it was a savings to the taxpayers if this complex, if these people want to move in here. This is a way that this proposal could be built, and it was negotiated and council approved at the time. And I don't understand why they keep coming back, wanting us to take over what is their road in the first place. And the other thing is, even if it's negotiated that there could be underground parking under it, whether it's there or not, that is an encumbrance on a road that's a township road. That would become a township road, and I don't want to see township roads with underground parking lots. So I'm not going to support this at all. Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm wondering, again, I'm coming back to the issue is the volume of daily school traffic on the road. I'm wondering, can we talk to the school district about reducing the volume or doing something to reduce the volume? Like, are they purposely, for example, funneling traffic out to that road to keep traffic moving in a circle around the school?
I think we could ask. There is a committee, I think the school liaison committee, that maybe could bring it up, but I believe it's also safety of the children and the traffic flow that has to be part of it. And technically, this road has a right of way for public access, and I think that may have been taken into consideration. So remember, we recall some discussions back when the school was built on traffic flow, but certainly that question could be raised again. Mr. Sefi, can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. You're correct, Your Worship. Staff can have further discussions with the school district staff to see what other physical measures may be implemented on the school site to encourage, and I use this word advisedly because I don't think they would agree to restrict, but rather encourage more than what's already been implemented. And I can just share with council that the design of the on-site flow, I don't know if any members of council have actually driven through the school site, but they will see that the access and egress is more easily, I guess, obtained and used along 84th Avenue as opposed to 207 A Street. There is a clear access point of 84th Avenue along the west of the roundabout, and the exit is encouraged currently and more prominent in the same sort of point, same 84th Avenue, further to the east, closer to the roundabout. Beyond that, certainly that's something that staff can discuss with the school district staff and the principal.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I was also wondering too, I believe it was Councillor Long that raised the issue of speed bumps. Maybe we should put speed bumps in on that road, or do some sort of a joint project with the strata to put speed bumps in on that road to try to slow down or reduce the volume of public use of it.
Okay, thank you. We discussed. Councillor Davis?
Right in the report, I think Councillor Long said it, staff do not support making any changes to the private status on title for 207 A Street. So I don't think staff wants to change it, and for very good reasons. To reduce the volume, like, there's a lot of people that live in that complex, like from 208 right to this road. There's an awful lot of people. There's 6 stories high, and I think they have speed bumps. They're big, huge speed bumps. Like, they're like 30, 40 feet wide, so you kind of come up onto a platform and go down. And I understand to reduce it, but like when you drive into the school there, you drive right out onto that road. It's the exiting is designed so that it'll come out onto that road. I don't think maybe we shouldn't actually, maybe next time, have a road that is in that heavy of density maybe shouldn't have been a strata. But anyhow, just comments. Oh, no, you know what? Going back to I don't think I'm going to support the motion to put the necessary legal process to assume a public ownership of that road. At least not right now. Maybe I think in, yeah, okay, I've said enough, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
I do see the speed humps there, but speed bumps could be added if the strata wanted to do that. I think they could put a local traffic sign up as well. That would help. But for sure, this is the case. If we make it a public road, the usage is going to go up. If you declare that a public road and we start putting expenses into it, that means the volume is going to increase. So it seems to go in the opposite direction that council apparently wants to go to, which is to deter uses of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify for the record here that the agreement with the township and have Mr. Sefi, correct me if I'm wrong, does not permit them to put signage up or traffic calming measures in place, as Councillor Long just outlined. They're not allowed to do any of those things. All right, thanks.
Yep, thank you. And they did put a sign up at one point, and I had it taken down.
I have no idea what Councillor Long's talking about.
Yeah, so, all right. For the discussion, so I'm going to, Councillor Long, second time.
I'd like to make sure we've got the facts and all that stuff. So could we do that? Could we tell them they can put a local only sign up or a speed bump? That'd be a separate motion or something another day, or can I make an amendment?
Well, the road is, the covenant or the right of way allows public access, so they cannot put signs up to restrict public access. Period.
Right. But if you put a sign up saying private road, that's restricting it. But if you put up local traffic only, that's not.
But it is local traffic there.
Well, whatever.
It is local traffic.
What about speed bumps? Are they allowed
like
to
putting up the speed limit?
Can they put up speed bumps?
That could be, if they wish to. They may not like that, though.
They're not going to like that.
That has to go through its own process, speed bumps. Okay. All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? So,
Sorry, Mayor Froze.
Sorry.
Councillor Davis
Yes.
was trying to.
I'm sorry,
okay.
Mayor Froze.
I didn't see his
I'm
hand go up.
confused. Could you just tell me what I'm voting on?
So the motion of Ms. Bauer, can you read the motion out, please?
Oh, I have the motion here, but we're voting on this motion.
Yes.
Okay, not on the main, not on receipt.
This is,
We already
no,
received.
receipt's been done.
Okay,
So now
thank
we're
you.
on the motion that Councillor Woodward has moved. Are we all clear? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And all those opposed? So Mayor Froze, Councillor Long, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Davis, Councillor Arneson opposed. It fails. All right, move on to number 8, and that's the Agricultural Land Commission application number 100391. And this is on 96th Avenue, 22153. If I could have a motion, please. Anybody? Don't be shy. I need a motion for number 8.
It says it complies. It doesn't say we're going to do
I
it.
believe Councillor Long is.
It says to
making that
advise, sorry, that council advised agricultural subdivision application submitted by Melissa on behalf of the owner.
Yeah, I move that we tell
Complies.
them it does comply, because it does.
Yes. Okay, it's moved. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion, Councillor Richter.
Yes, my question is concerning the protection of the waterway going forward that sort of goes through the middle of the two properties. How are we going to make sure that this doesn't get filled in?
Mr. Sefi?
Your Worship, the process will be subject to council's approval, referring this to the Land Commission, and subject to their approval, a subdivision process. As part of the subdivision process, the protection of the watercourse will be ensured and enshrined in the appropriate tools and documents.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Yeah, I just got a sense that there may be some that don't support it, but I mean, the motion that has been made is, does it or does it not comply with our rural plan? And it does. So, I mean, that's the basis I believe we should be voting on, whether you agree with it or not. I guess we'd have to find another method by which we would reject something like this, but we do need to advise the ALC of what our rules are, and that's what the rules are, unless we want to change them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I believe that the final decision, regardless of what the Township of Langley says, is up to the Agricultural Land Commission and their representatives. You know, we have a bit of a say, but sometimes our say is not always accepted. I actually think that I think it's been mentioned by another councillor either earlier in the evening or during this process that we have to be cognizant of the flooding and the water over the last little while, and it gives some of us, myself in particular, a chance maybe to sit back and wait before we make any major changes in zoning and in wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just to clarify some of those comments, this isn't a zoning, it's already zoned. So just to clarify, Mr. Seffi, council's role here under the Agricultural Land Commission Rules Act, whatever it is to just confirm that this complies and that's something that comes to us. We don't make the decision whether or not it comes out or not, or that this can go ahead. That's up to the Land Commission. But if we were to say no to this, that means that we're saying no to our community plan. And does the applicant still have the ability to forward it to the Agricultural Land Commission? I believe that they don't. It's only the municipality can under some new rules. Can you maybe clarify, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess the first order of business, Your Worship, is to make sure that we're all on the same page. This is not an exclusion, so it's going to remain. The applicant has not made application to remove from the Land Commission, land reserve, but rather subdivide within. So just want to make sure we get that
That's right.
Clarified. And then subsequently, you're correct, Your Worship, the applicant or applicants, landowners, are not able to make application directly to the Land Commission. They are required to apply through the local government.
Yes, thank you. So this isn't a rezoning, this isn't a removal, this is only us saying that it does comply. And I believe it does, so by saying it doesn't, I don't know how we can justify that. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I don't think this will satisfy the discussion today or maybe going forward, but I think part of the issue is, and we've discussed this many times around the council table, is the idea that if we are forwarding something, as we have been directed to do, to the Agricultural Land Commission, which fundamentally I feel both conflicts with the spirit and the letter, really, of our agricultural viability strategy in terms of keeping larger tracts of agricultural property for the purpose of farming. That's a fundamental question that I think we need to ask ourselves. So to me, sure, I have to consider, is this allowable under our community plans? But fundamentally then, I think if you're saying that you are for the preservation of farmland and want this kind of farmland to continue, then you have to ask yourself that question. And I don't, I do feel conflicted sometimes when I get this sense, well, I'm supposed to follow the rule because this is what we're saying. But in fact, we have other competing rules that I think also have to inform our decision making about this. Because I notice in this, the rationale is it's dissected by a waterway. To me, that is not a compelling reason to divide it into two properties. So it may conform to what the minimum lot size is, but is that really a good reason for me to do that simply because it complies with a minimum lot size when, as I've just said, it conflicts with our other policies? So I think that's the basic conundrum some of us struggle with. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I will support this. I farm on a property smaller than each one of these very successfully, and so I think it's still viable. And it isn't our role, it's the Agricultural Land Commission's role to decide. So we're just confirming our plans. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed?
I'm opposed.
Fails on a 4-4 tie. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Davis, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Richter opposed. Okay. Move on to number 9. And this Heritage Alteration Permit Application number 101271, Malloway, Old Eel Road. So could I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Woodward. Is there any discussion? Councilor Arneson?
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate the opportunity to look at the renderings and to make a determination about this. I'm basically in favor. I did have a question through your Worship to staff, however, and it could be the scale of the drawings, but it seems to me when you look at the rendering, I'm not sure what page it's on, but the garage/workshop accessory building looks rather large relative to the size of the actual residence. So I'm wondering if there is any standard that applies to the size of a building such as that in the heritage alteration permit area, or if it's covered off by how much volume or footprint of square footage we can have. I just wondered which of those two standards there is in play.
Mrs. Huffy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the first comment I have is that there are standards, and the standards are basically the zoning bylaw provisions. And the second comment I have, Your Worship, is that the drawings that were referenced by Councillor Arneson are in fact to scale. So beyond that, I don't know if Mr. Richardson has anything that he wishes to add, Your Worship.
Thank you, Worship. Just to confirm, as Mr. Safey had said, the drawings in the package, I know my black and white version here show a grayed out version. So there's an existing single family residence with a proposed addition. And then the accessory building there, as Mr. Safey outlined, the zoning bylaw reigns and allows what's currently provided for as indicated on the slide.
Okay, does that satisfy you, Councilor Arneson? Okay, Councilor Richter?
Yeah, there are no plans to put a secondary suite in there, are there, in that accessory building?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see no further discussion. I'll call the question on E9. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, finally got through page 4 of a 27-page agenda. Rocketing right along. We're going to go to bylaws for first and second reading, and F1 is official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100196 and development permit application number 101169. Latimer Properties, bylaw 5755 and bylaw 5756. Could I have a motion for first and second? Councilor Davis and a seconder, Councilor Whitmarsh. Councilor Richter?
Thank you. Sorry, I just put my hand down by
Okay.
mistake.
Okay.
I was
No
putting
problem.
it up. Okay.
All
so
right.
no,
Oh,
I
did
didn't
you?
want to. Yeah, I did.
Oh,
have
you
a
do?
question.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, what's the population density that's going to come in with this development? And has that population density been included in the 80,000 that's been approved for Willoughby, or is it over and above the 80,000? If it's over and above the 80,000, is it over and above 100,000? Will it take population over and above 100,000?
Mr. Seffi?
Your Worship, I can confirm for council that the density that is being applied here is what was approved or anticipated as part of the Latimer plan, the specifics of which are outlined in the report. In particular, the provision is a density of between 8 to 15 UPA. I think in terms of the follow-up or the secondary part of Councilor Richter's question, the projection or the targets, if you will, or the projections, depends on how you wish to look at it, Your Worship. It's I guess, a projection more than it's a target or one that is being planned for, the population numbers, that is. It still remains at 85,000, what staff may have referred to as part of, I guess, previous discussions would have been what has not been contemplated in terms of the population in the secondary suites that are I guess, or have been for the most part unaccounted for, because one cannot know whether a secondary suite is actually going to be rented out or used by a second family or not. So that is part of the challenge. But nevertheless, the 85,000 is what the population projection was at the time of the development of the Latimer plan, and that was something that is gone into this development as well.
Okay, so this is strictly according to the plan as approved within the 85,000. This is not a variation that's going to add additional population density. And the reason I'm raising this question is I'm quite concerned. Willoughby started out at 68,000 total population. It went to, I thought, 80, maybe it was 84,000. But to hear just recently in one of our meetings that we're now looking at 100,000, we got to get a handle on this, because that increase in density is driving municipal costs up. So this is why I'm asking, is this within the 85? You're saying it is? Okay. But if it's not within the 85, if it's going to take us over the 85, I think council has a right to know that.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Richter, Councillor Arneson opposed. It carries. I'll move on to F2, and this rezoning application number 100604 and development permit applications number 101302 and 101226. Royale Properties, bylaw 5757. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Davis. Discussion, seeing none. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Richter, Councillor Arneson opposed. It carries. Now we move on to F3. This is the official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100152 and development permit applications number 100931 and 101017. This is Cron. Bylaw 5739, bylaw 5740, bylaw 5754. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long and a seconder. Have a second. Councillor Whitmarsh. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question as I asked before, particularly as this is a community plan amendment. So how many additional population are going to be added as a result of the amendment to this application over and above the 85,000, which has been approved for Willoughby?
Mr. Sefi, I'll take a stab at that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to look at the numbers, Your Worship. This does trigger a community plan amendment. The proponents have requested a reconfiguration of a couple of the designations in the Carbolt plan based on the existing layout and the existing applications that have been approved by council. Staff support that. I believe it triggers 24 additional units, and that is something that I guess based on the analysis, based on the projections that were done back at the time when the Latimer plan, Carbolt plan was adopted, would arguably not have been considered.
Okay. Well, this gets back to the point I made earlier. We've got to get a handle on these population increases. We're not monitoring them effectively, and council needs to start monitoring them. Also, I note there's 17 significant trees and only 2 are going to be retained. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I actually wanted to, one of those rare times, a question I don't know the answer to. Could I clarify whereabouts in policy, if it is, because I want to start learning a bit about the basis for the 20-year restrictive covenant on the apartments. Where does the 20-year come from?
Your Worship, I believe Councillor Woodward is referring to the housing agreement.
Yeah, 12D, securing the 220 apartments as rental for a 20-year period. Where's the 20 years come from?
That is based on not so much as a policy. If the staff report references a policy, I think it was intended as a past practice. And sometimes, I guess, we need to be a bit more careful in terms of what we're referring to when we're talking about the policy. So it's not a formal policy of council, but rather past practice and best practice, not just past practice, but also best practice across the Lower Mainland in terms of what might be an acceptable term for a housing project to remain as a rental based on the submissions of the proponent.
Yeah, I've seen some of these go by, and I'm wondering if the reason this caught my attention, of course, is the additional density with the amendment, which, for rental apartments sounds good. But has there been any sort of discussion occurring about making the additional units a longer period of rental? So one of the concerns I'm starting to consider and think about is what happens when a lot of these 20-year covenants start to expire 15 years from now. Some of them that have been approved here this term or maybe previously. We're building a rental stock that's going to expire, as opposed to maybe getting a small percentage of permanent rental stock for additional density. So I'm going to support this, but hopefully the proponent's watching and they can bring some information to the public hearing in regards to whether they would consider some portion of these to be permanently rental or rental for a much longer period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Well, I wanted to point out the rental aspect of it as well, saying that we do need rental in the region. I think I've seen some that were even 10 years, so I think the council said, hey, that's not enough and we need to be longer. But it's a good point. I don't know where the 20 comes from either. Maybe that can be addressed at the public hearing, but I imagine that, as Mr. Safi has said, if that's the average around the region, at least we're in the ballpark. But we certainly need rental accommodations everywhere in the Lower Mainland, so it's good to see that that's actually coming through with this application.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I generally really like this project. I think that, I think as council, we've had many discussions around rental units and increasing the number of rental units in our community. So I am pleased to see this as a rental unit building. My only concern that I have, and something that might want to be discussed as we get further along, maybe at a public hearing, and want to hear what the public have to say. But when I look at the renderings of it on page 8 and page 9, the amount of space that's between the two buildings, and with it being 6 stories tall, leaves, the way the renderings look, it looks like the passage down the middle would be shaded most of the time. Difficult to get a lot of sun down those areas, and so it seems like some of the lower level apartments would experience shade just about almost all the time, and not really get that sunlight on the inner side. So it's just a question. Maybe that's just the renderings themselves that make it look like a pretty narrow passage between buildings. But that's something that certainly is of interest to me, but certainly I'd want to move it on to public hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I noted that there's 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, but I didn't see any reference to studio suites. So I'm wondering what the rationale would be and whether or not we have any specific policies around making smaller units for the purpose of providing more affordability, because by default, if you have less square footage, it's generally, a less expensive unit. So I just wondered if we had any policies around that, or if we could enforce something like that, or if that's up to the discretion of the proponent.
Mr.
Safi. Thank you, Your Worship. The short answer is that there aren't any policies. It's typically market forces that determine what may be an attractive size of a unit for people to rent. And I think it would be subject of external factors such as what's happening around the area, the context, Is it in a truly downtown core or outside? And again, market forces. Could it be enforced? Subject to council's direction, staff could take a look and see what kind of a process we may be able to follow in terms of requiring a specific size of a unit. But I suggest that this is something that is very much a function of economic realities of the area.
Thank you. And just to point out, it seems to me that if we want to make inclusive communities, that we would have a diversity of sizes of apartments, because individuals living there, for example, a single person, a senior, a young person, a student, or whoever, could make use of having a smaller square footage. So I think we should actually look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further discussion, so I'll call the question on F3. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Richter and Councillor Davis opposed. Carries. Thank you. Move to G, bylaws first, second, and third reading. G1 is Langley Building Bylaw Amendment 2021, Bylaw 5753. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, seconder. Councillor Whitmarsh, discussion. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I have a question as to whether these are adequate cost increases given the inflationary pressures we're now feeling.
Mr. Steffi.
Certainly from a staff's perspective, Your Worship, they are. Keeping in mind that staff has taken a look at the actual costs of processing applications, which is based on the construction value, which have gone up. And as such, over the next 2 years, staff is quite comfortable that they are the appropriate numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question on G1. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to G2. This is 2022 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw, Bylaw number 5759. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Davis. No discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. And move to bylaws for final adoption. I1 is Highway Closing Dedication Removal Amendment, Bylaw 5578. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis, seconder. Councillor Ferguson, discussion. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Arneson, Councillor Richter opposed. It carries. Move on to minutes of committees. We have K1, Seniors Advisory Committee, Tree Protection Advisory Committee, Agriculture Advisory and Economic Enhancement Committee, Council Process Committee, and Heritage Advisory Committee. Boy, busy time. Motion to adopt those minutes. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Councillor Ferguson.
Bring the motion on Seniors Advisory Committee. It hasn't come up yet.
No, we're just on
Yeah, it
K1.
hasn't come up yet.
Okay. Councillor Richter on K1.
Yeah, I was just wondering why the December 1st Heritage Advisory Committee had no council co-chair present.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't there. Was there someone there to chair it though? There was somebody there. So then we can go ahead with the meetings. I don't know. All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. K2, I think Councillor Ferguson wanted to move K2.
The endorse the age-friendly, age and dementia-friendly action plan on attachment B. So move.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Arneson, and discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Number 3 is Council Process Committee recommended motion. And so on K3,
I'll move.
Councillor Richter, seconder. Councillor Arneson, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. K4, who would like to move K4? Councillor Woodward, seconder. Councillor Ferguson. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. K5, who would like to take a turn and move K5? K5, Councillor Woodward, and the seconder, Councillor Whitmarsh. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. And K6. And so who would like to move that? Councillor Richter, I'll let you move that one. you move it?
Yeah,
Councilor Richter
2
moves it.
years later, sure.
Give you the honor of moving that one. Who's the seconder? Councilor
But
Woodward.
I did have a question on it, Mr.
Sure,
Mayor.
go ahead. Go ahead, Councilor.
I was just wondering, it seems to me we went through a whole lot. And out of all the ones we went through, there were only 2 that we decided to take action on. The rest were pushing forward to the next council.
I think it was the skill of our clerk that got us there.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I know I asked the same question, but yeah, it was a few that were already done or redundant, and some that, we kind of decided to move on. So these are the ones. Yeah. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, move on to the Mayor and Council report. It's fairly brief. Let's bring it up on my screen. Certainly, I'd like to welcome everyone who's stayed through this marathon and is still with us at Council. This is our last Council meeting of 2021. I would like to say, as chair of the Metro Vancouver Zero Waste Committee, I'd like to remind everyone about Metro Vancouver's annual campaign, Create Memories, Not Garbage. I've been on a couple of media jaunts on this one to discuss it, and I encourage everyone to celebrate the holiday season by giving experiences or gifts that last, wrapping and decorating sustainably, avoiding food waste, and as always, support small business by shopping locally. On November the 26th, Councilors Arneson, Ferguson, and myself led the first cars through the wonderful Christmas in Williams Park event. The Society has done a spectacular job yet again, allowing people to view the display from the comfort of their own cars. I encourage you to view this brilliant display of holiday cheer, which concludes on December the 19th. I had a great time driving through with my little granddaughter. Council was busy. On November 26th, Acting Mayor Kunst attended the Seroptimus International of the Langley's 35th anniversary celebration. The Seroptimus have touched countless lives and given women and girls support and assistance that they needed to succeed for 3.5 decades. It's a fantastic organization, and we congratulate them on the success and thank them for their hard work and dedication to making our community a better place. Also, on November 26th, Councilor Arneson attended the Langley Arts Council's incognito open reception. During this event, artists remained anonymous until after the work was sold, and a portion of the proceeds were sent to the Canadian Red Cross. Such a fun and rewarding event. On November 30th, Councillor Ferguson attended the flag raising hosted by the Consulate for Barbados in Vancouver that celebrated Barbados' 55 years of independence. Barbados recently became the newest republic in the world, and we congratulate them on their achievements. Councillor Ferguson also attended the Langley Community Action Team's Christmas meeting and lunch on December 9. On December 11, Acting Mayor Kunst and Councillors Arneson, Davis, Ferguson, and Whitmarsh participated in the Aldergrove Christmas Light Up Parade organized by the Aldergrove Agricultural Fair and Festival Association. It was a chilly night, but that didn't stop children and families from enjoying the festivities. Councillor Whitmarsh and the paid call firefighters from Brooks's Fire Hall number 6 walked around the community with Santa to accept food donations for the food bank and money in support of local charities. Thank you for doing that. Meetings, I attended several meetings, Translate several committee meetings, Metro inaugural board meeting where Councillor Richter and I attended. Every year there's a new board technically. Chair Dollywall and Vice Chair Buchanan were re-elected in their positions. And I think most of the committees have remained as they were before and will carry on for the last year of the term. And with that, also Translate met. We had a board meeting, a public board meeting, and a closed board meeting. And the Mayor's Council also met. I also went to Victoria and attended the Municipal Finance Authority Board of Trustees meeting there, and had a real brief little Christmas social. Councillor Arneson was at the Fraser Valley Regional Library Board meeting, and Councillor Richter attended the Metro inaugural board meeting with me, as mentioned. So if there's anything else Council would like to add, with that, that's my report. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. Newsflash. The segue from the FVRL, the Fraser Valley Regional Library, is there was a news release put out today that we have decided as a board to go forward with a fine-free policy. So that means that people who have overdue library books as of January 1st will no longer be subject to a fine. Just in case you're worried, it doesn't mean that you can just take books and keep them at home. What it means is you'll still be subject to have to pay for those, but it has been discovered over time that the disincentive for finding people is that unfortunately people that are marginalized and probably need the library services the most have a challenge trying to come back to the library if they owe money. So the idea is that the administrative cost of running the fine program is actually eats quite a bit into any profit that you would make. So we were going forward with fine free. So knock yourself out. Thanks.
Excellent. Is this retroactive? Councillor Davis and I would like to know.
That would be a no.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think I'm clear. All right, we will move on now to other business. And Councillor Woodward, you have number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to read this one out. I know we're getting late, but I would like to read portions of this. I won't read the whole thing. And then I won't read the resolution. I might read some of it. So I'd like to move it, and then I'll speak to it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
Councillor Richter seconds. Moved by
And I'd
Councillor
also like to request division.
Okay. So
Division
do
between
division.
A and B. Is that what I should assume?
Yes, between A and B.
No, I'm fine with
Okay.
that, as Mr. Mayor. I could even move it separately if you want to do that.
okay, we'll just do a quick motion
Okay.
to because it's already moved and seconded. So a motion to divide by Councillor Richter, seconded by who wants to second that? Councillor Woodward. I'll just show of hands. All those in favor, opposed, and carries. Okay, so we can go ahead and speak to them both, and then we can just vote. It'll be expedited, I think.
Yeah, so I'm gonna use up some speaking time here rather than read the motion and then speak. So
Sure.
if people could just, members of council could look at the whereases. So whereas number 1, Fire Hall 8 and number 5 in Brookswood, both need to be replaced. So this came from page 34 of the 5-year master plan. So I'll give you a chance to pull that up for those that can, but it's on page 34, and there's a chart there which outlines all the fire halls and earthquake resistance of the fire halls. Fire hall number 8 is not earthquake resistant, and neither is Fire Hall 5 or Fire Hall 7, which is in Alder and Brookswood. So that's where number 2 comes from. I do believe that we are heading down the path where we need to start turning our attention to what our emergency infrastructure is going to look like, simply because it may not be there when we most need it, being that it is not earthquake resistant as outlined in the master plan. I recently toured a mixed-use fire hall in Vancouver, which is outlined here in 3 and 4, which I think is an alternative for staff to start looking at and the chief to start looking at with senior management, whether that's something that we would want to look at as well. There were no reports, actually the fire hall was quite, Mr. Chick, what was his rank again? Captain Moore was quite proud of it in terms of the combination with the housing above and the good that it does in the community, and that it helped pay for the fire hall. So that's where number 5 comes from. I'd like to start looking at that as a need in our community and making use of the land where fire halls will go within residential areas, such as the hall in Walnut Grove and the hall in Brookswood. So therefore, be it resolved there that I'd like to see a staff report, which is where this process would start from, and the feasibility, potential density of providing for mixed-use residential and childcare uses located above new fire halls in residential areas, which is Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove and Fire Hall 5 in Brookswood, which again are not earthquake resistant currently, one of which is staffed full-time. So it has firefighters that we're going to need at that critical time in the basement of Hall 8. Hall 8. So there's a referral here in B. So one is to look at the feasibility and potential density providing for mixed-use fire halls to help pay for them and make best use of this land for the social need. Then refer to the 2022 budget process, consideration for the replacement of Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove at its existing location. And now there's a typo here. And in terms of standalone and mixed-use forms, that should read or mixed-use forms. So I'm not presupposing that it has to be any certain way based upon A, succeeding or failing and being considered further by staff. I would like to also look at as part of a plan. I want to see a plan for the potential replacement of Fire Hall 8, if that's something council wants to look at within the budget process. And then, of course, within the chief's process and the union and the management and council working together on how that's going to get done. Is it going to get done through interim facilities while Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove is being replaced? And C is I'd like to see the cost of the renovations and upgrades for Fire Hall 2 in Fort Langley to handle full time. and composite levels of service, potentially as a stand-in for Fire Hall 8 while it's being replaced. So I want to see the costs and the feasibility of all those items as part of this budget process. I want to remind council, we tend to think about the budget in terms of 1 year, 2021 or 2022 budget. It's actually a 5-year financial plan. So I would like to start to think about what is a 5-year financial plan look like for starting to replace some of this emergency infrastructure that we haven't really talked about while I've been on council, and I think we've got to get on with it, especially with the events in Abbotsford. And the more research I've done looking at halls and seeing the situation in other municipalities, I think we've fallen a bit behind in this regard, and I'd like to get caught up. So I look again on page 34 of the long-term master plan, and I see the Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove that has firefighters in the basement is not earthquake resistance. We need to address that and deal with it. So that's the rationale for the motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor froze. I don't think you're.
I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you. Are we speaking to the divided motion or the whole motion? Because we did divide the motion, right?
Yeah, we did divide the motion. So to the whole motion, I think you can speak to both, then we'll vote on both.
Okay. I support A. I think it's very innovative and forward-thinking topic to look at for replacement fire halls. I'm very interested in the business case. I'm very interested what the revenue flows could be from doing that, and how much of the actual building costs could be recouped through rental income. So I'd like to thank Councillor Woodward very much for bringing A forward. I don't feel quite as happy about B though, because I think that this is a purely political motion, and it properly belongs in an election platform. It doesn't belong in the last year of a council's budget. And I would like to amend Part B to refer it to a CPC meeting under the new council. Because B is going to require major policy and funding decisions, and I think the new council that will be elected, and if they're elected based on fire needs in this community, then that's the council that should be laying the groundwork and laying the plan over the 5-year period in order to get these built. So that's what I would like to do. Do you want me to move an amendment to B right now, Mr. Mayor, or just wait and hear what others have to say?
So what we'll do is we'll go through A first. Once I go through the speakers list, we'll vote on A and then B, and then B would come, and then if you wish to make a referral motion on B, then that would be appropriate at that time. So okay. What we'll do is I'll move down the list. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you, Your Worship, and appreciate the motion here. I would say, along with, as Councillor Richter has mentioned, I like the idea of getting a report on this maybe a bit unique form of doing a fire hall with residential up top. I don't know if that's a good thing or not at this point. I don't have enough information to know if it's good or not, but the more information we have, the better we can make the decision. So having a report like this that provides us with that information is only a good thing. I can't imagine that we would not want to have information on it. So certainly I support A. On the section of B, I guess my feeling is that we do need to, as a council, address fire hall challenges that we have. We do know that we have some fire halls that are aging. We know some areas for fire halls will have to be upgraded to accommodate full-time career firefighters at some point. And so as a council, we know that this is a monumental decision. They're expensive, but yet we need to start. We need to start somewhere. So whether it's this year where we make these decisions, and I'm not sure if Fire Hall 8 is the number one first choice to do as we move forward. This is certainly in this motion, or whether or not we leave this to the next council as Councillor Richter has suggested. It is important that we start to think about fire halls now. We can't keep delaying it. I've been on council 7 years, and we haven't done anything so far with new fire halls or any significant upgrades. So it is time we start thinking about it. It doesn't have to be done in 1 year. It is part of a 5-year plan. And so whether we make that decision to move forward and make that now, today, as part of moving to the budget process, doesn't mean we're going to spend millions of dollars in next year's budget, but it does mean we begin the process, or we wait till the next council. Either way could work, but it does need to become a priority for this council.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's good. Number one is number A is a good thing. I didn't realize that. I actually have toured a number of fire halls, but I didn't realize the one. I haven't seen this hall fire. The one in Killarney there. My dad used to own a hardware store just down the street from when the old fire hall. I didn't realize they put up a mixed housing use there. So I'm very familiar with the streets up in Killarney there, because as I say, but the idea and the concept of doing something different, creative. I mean, land is getting more and more expensive, and if we can do something with land above, like the city of Vancouver has done, I'm not sure the circumstances. But it's great to be looking at that, and I am also familiar with many of the other fire halls on Knight Street and certainly through the East Vancouver area. What they've done there is, I guess there's one at 54th and Knight that they've been working on for about 2 years or 3 years now. I don't think they're ever going to finish it, but it takes a long time to build a fire hall. But it's a great opportunity. And now, as far as I'll talk to both right now. I mean, we present things to budget or send things to budget. We start talking about it. Whether we proceed in a 2022 budget, that's just a discussion. It begins the process. And if you don't move with a process somewhere along the line, then it gets delayed. And I'd hate to see things that are important to be delayed. I think it's important to move forward and we used to call punt it to the next council, but to move forward discussing it. And we're not going to be having brick and mortars tomorrow, but the idea is to discuss things and the importance of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Well, this is an interesting proposition. It is certainly innovative and something that other communities are doing. Just over the brief amount of time over the weekend, I looked into other communities in addition to Vancouver who are doing this, and Victoria has one project that they endorsed 2019. Theirs happens to be a very large redevelopment proposal, so I'm not sure about the scale of what we're looking at. I can just off the top of my head, agree to portion A. I'm not sure fire hall number 8, based on what I know so far, is amenable to this, but could be possible. And also, I think we really need to look into the fact and recognize we just endorsed a housing action plan. And one of the things that was considered in the housing action plan, these kind of innovative approaches. And so I certainly think that we have enough requisite information. I think the challenge will be the business plan. Really, going forward, it depends on what kind of components you want to put together. But if I'm looking at affordable and deeply affordable, those are very difficult to achieve. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that will be up to then the kind of informed information that we get from some service providers, from maybe developers, from individuals who have some very detailed experience in this level of development. So I'm certainly in favor of this. I agree that we don't want to continue to sit on plans where we've got identified need with our fire halls, but at the same time, I think at this point, I probably can't support B, mostly because I agree, but it depends on the wording with Councillor Richter's rationale. I think it is a proposition that is a bridge too far at this point for this council, given the lateness of our budget discussions, as well as the near proximity of the 2022 election. So I agree, if somebody wants to bring that forward as an election platform and proposition, well, a good idea. So I think I would like to know more. And so I'll be supporting A but not B, unless the language is something that I can support for the second part of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
This is something that might work in Vancouver or Victoria or somewhere where the land prices are, just out of this world. I don't know if the township is in that position yet. I don't know if anyone's seen the financial picture or all the details of these initiatives. I really would be surprised if it didn't actually cost more to build a facility like this than just a standalone fire hall. The other things I fear the integration of the public folks that are living upstairs and the goings on at a fire hall in terms of emergencies and other things that they have to deal with. It's not an ideal mix, and I think that it could be fraught with some danger as well. I can't be specific, but I would say that this kind of approach might be suitable in where the land values are just out of reach, and that could be the case in Vancouver, certainly. But I think it'd be far better to have a standalone fire hall in the township of Langley than having to go down this route. So I'm sure council's going to approve a report. So who would say no to more information? But my feelings is it sounds good, but it's probably not saving any money. I don't think it may be a suitable plan in the end or a scheme, because I really don't know if you want to integrate the public and fire safety together. It sounds good, but it may be other problems that go along with that.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a piece of history with council. Councillor Ferguson will, of course, remember, as well as probably Councillor Long, but the other members of council may not remember the way the decision was made to bring full-time fire into the township. And this was back in the early 2000s. And what happened was there was a request coming forward from the public about the need for full-time fire. We had total paid call then. The fire department went out and did a very extensive public interaction process. They went to different malls and like the Otter Co-op Mall. They went up to the Walnut Grove Mall, and they collected information and support and signatures from different members of the public. This information ended up coming back to a new council to make the decision. And as I recall, Councillor Ferguson and I were the ones that put forward the motion creating full-time fire in the township, and that motion was created. But it was not until after a very extensive education process occurred with the public and consultation with the public, which is what makes it a political realm issue. And it's also a policy realm issue because we have so many things we have to spend money on. We just don't have enough money to spend on everything. And we need a clear mandate, I think, from the public telling us that, yes, replacement of fire halls is an immediate priority and we want it dealt with now. So that is why I'm suggesting that B be taken to the public realm in the election that's coming up in 2022. I think it would be a wonderful election topic for the community to debate and discuss. And based on what the community wants, because they're the ones that have to pay for this, that will be the mandate that the new council comes forward with. So that is why I think referring B to the first CPC meeting under the new council is where this should go, because the new council will know what the mandate was that the public has given them to proceed with. I agree with what Councillor Arneson said about us trying to tackle this right now in the less than a year of a council is not going to probably be doing it the fair public process that it needs to receive. So, Mr. Mayor, I know there's others who want to talk, but I still want to amend this motion if I can have the chance afterwards.
Yep. When we get to it. Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate those comments. I think those are all fairly reasonable, almost all of them. I think that I'm going to address a few of them. Fire Hall 8 is the only fire hall we have that has full-time firefighters in it that is not earthquake resistant. So that's why I'm making a motion to start the process to replace it. And I want to repeat that, to start the process. So I don't want to lose a year on potentially funding some very minor, inexpensive design work and feasibility review that would have to occur on any new hall potentially, especially for replacing an existing one, coming up with a plan of how to do it, what that would cost to do it, what the timeline will be to do it. It'll be 5 years or 4 years from the day we decide to start, and I'm hoping that day is today, to seeing 4 to 5 years to seeing it actually open. For it to go to CPC on the next council, we've seen how that goes here. Sometimes those things sit on that agenda for 2 years. So, I don't want to lose 2 to 3 years because it goes to CPC. I'd prefer to discuss it a bit in this budget and start potentially looking at funding some design work. That's the rationale here. Then that design work could come back and inform the first budget of the next council. I'm going to speak to the political motivation thing. I mean, the downside of the firefighters union endorsing council candidates, that's not me doing that, that's them doing that. And the problem with advocating for fire is that it's pretty easy to then turn around and say you're just looking for endorsements. I toured the Hall 8 in Walnut Grove, and I didn't like what I saw. It's that simple. So I have a choice at that point. I can leave it for an election, or I can try to save a year and do something about it now. And then with the comeback that somehow it's politically motivated. A public process for an election is great. I mean, that might make sense to some. I would have appreciated that on the Williams neighborhood plan, adopted on the day before the election. So didn't see a public process for the campaign on the Williams neighborhood plan. I don't see why we would lose a year to discuss a fire hall. So to me, the need speaks for itself, and I don't want to lose a year, and I'm not expecting that somehow we're going to approve a brand new fire hall in this next budget, but we can at least start the process to cost out what it'll be for the next council, for them to decide that at that time, versus then get there and then lose a year or two on CPC. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you. I have a question, a couple of questions maybe through your worship to staff, and I'm not sure who's the best to answer this. I know that we have the chief is here and others on staff, but in this motion, it refers to Fire Hall 8 and Fire Hall 2, both one for replacement and one for looking at potential upgrades and renovations. And I don't know if this is premature, and if it is, just you can tell me. But I'm wondering if are these the two that would be of the highest priority for staff looking at it? These are coming forward in a motion made by Councillor Woodward. I'm just not wondering if, from a staff perspective, are these the two highest of priority? Is there other ones that are of high priority? Is there fire halls that we don't have yet that would be of higher priority? How would staff respond to Fire Hall 8 and Fire Hall 2 being identified as the ones to look at? Maybe just some comments from staff.
Mr. Backen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start, and if the chief wishes to jump in, he can as well. I think it depends upon the criteria that one evaluates the fire halls on. In terms of age and construction type, I think the comments are valid that each has its drawbacks and each needs something at some point, such as being improved structure for earthquake or improved, whatever else may be. You've actually asked, though, in terms of not the structures, but also in terms of the priorities vis-a-vis future uses. If there was to be a unlimited pot of money available, would we then look at fixing them and adding other fire halls? I think the answer is we probably would, with the way that Willoughby is beginning to develop. We'd look at that as being something that we would look at, and as well some of the freeway needs. We've talked about those at length in terms of what the options are for new halls. So it really comes down to what questions being asked in terms of whether we're talking about structural integrity and capability for the long term, vis-a-vis immediate service benefits, vis-a-vis other options or other issues that may arise from a policy perspective.
Okay, so maybe I'll just, yeah, I appreciate that there's lots of other concerns that we would have and things that we need to think through when we talk about this topic. But if I don't know what a fire hall costs, but I don't know, I'll throw out 15 or 20 million dollars. I have no idea. But if it was that amount, and we all of a sudden said today we have $15 million to improve fire hall or a fire hall or fire halls in the township of Langley, where would the staff at this point maybe recommend that we take that first $15 million? Would it be on fire hall 8 or 2 or something different?
I guess your question is only half complete. What is the rest of your criteria? Is it to actually replace existing infrastructure, or to improve the safety of firefighters, or to improve the safety of the residents? You have to go further to the next step to establish the priority. With that, then we can answer the question. The short answer is I think we'd probably like all of them. That would be the best answer. But is that practical? Likely not.
Okay. I appreciate that it's a difficult question to answer, but I guess what we're faced with in this motion, and like I said, I think we need to move forward with things. What we have in this motion is 2 specific fire halls, and saying, here you go, these are the priorities, and they maybe are the priorities that Councillor Woodward has, and maybe they're the right priorities, but I'm trying to get from staff what the priorities might be. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Note that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's fair to note that both Councillor Richter and Councillor Woodward are both right on this, and the fact that on one hand, option A or item A is seems to be getting an awful lot of interest at the council, which is interesting. We'll have to wait and see what the vote is. And option B, we either discuss it now or discuss it later. And at least we're discussing it, period. And it's not getting thrown out the door or voted against. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but there is a motion, I think, pending from Councillor Richter. So regardless of what happened, it's a win-win for council. And we're talking about important things like safety, fire, and especially with what's happened over the last little while with neighboring communities, and also with other things. These are important safety issues to address. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Comments about A. I think that there's all kinds of concerns that could come up there. Who's going to live in these apartments? Who's going to subsidize them? And how will that possibly compromise the performance of a fire hall? I think it's a really dangerous mix, but that's that. But let me ask about the concerns that have been brought up about Walnut Grove. It's 29 years old. So, through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Backen, what is the plan to replace that one? And secondly, while we're at it, on C, because I'm interested in the B part more than A. A, I'm just not supporting, and I hope, well, anyway, we'll just see where that goes. But in C, I thought when we opened Fort Langley, when I went to the opening of that there was provisions made that it could be converted quite easily, or had been planned for conversion to full-time. So these are 2 things that are in B. One is what is happening with Walnut Grove, so maybe I could find out what the plan is of the township currently. It's 29 years old, so when will that be replaced? And in Fort Langley, is it not already upgrading to full-time built into the design?
Your Worship, thank you. The Fort Langley is the easier one to answer. It is a more modern fire hall, so it has more capabilities. I think you're correct, though. It would need some adaptation to be for full-time, but I think it's partway there. It was built to standards that I think contemplated full-time, but I don't think it's quite there yet. But
So when it goes full-time, we just go ahead and do those modifications. I don't know if we need a council direction to do that.
Well, I think the question was actually going to the need for Hall 8, which is Walnut Grove. Would the Fort Langley Hall act as a stand-in then, or is there a temporary hall while that's being sorted out? And that certainly also is an option depending upon the overall needs. You're quite right. The Walnut Grove Hall is 29 years old. It is a priority, I think, for replacement or adaptation, depending upon the resources available. But much like the previous comments, it really depends upon the criteria one's looking at. not only vis-a-vis the fire department itself, but other priorities of council. One of the reasons why it hasn't been adapted or improved or relocated yet, of course, is each budget cycle, council's faced with some tough decisions, and we have an operating, functioning fire hall that does need some work, but that's something that's going to be challenged when compared to other things that may actually need work as well. So it's something that is certainly part of the fire master plan as being something that needs to be addressed, but it never had a date specified along with it. And of course, there's also the stories of much older fire halls in existence throughout North America that are functioning, not suggesting that should be the rule for this hall at all, because I think the structural issues there do need a plan forward to be addressed, but relatively speaking, in the age of fire halls, it's at midlife, not at the end of life in terms of its age, but that does not comment on the structural integrity of it that needs to be addressed.
Well, would it be wise to do upgrades to make it earthquake resistant?
Generally speaking, when one starts to embark upon upgrades,
Yeah.
it's much like the school district. You're going to see that the cost of the upgrades represent basically a percentage, say half or more, of building a new facility. And in one situation, you have an old fixed-up facility, and the other one, you have a new facility. So there's certain advantages to, as we see with schools, not to actually upgrade them, but to actually replace them.
Thanks. Well, Your Worship, I actually am supportive of BA. I don't know if it requires, from what the administrator has told us, it may not require a motion of council, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, I think we should be embarking upon planning of that. There's no political aspect in that for me, really. I mean, if the staff needs some direction from council to say, hey, let's get planning a replacement for Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove, I can't see anybody that would say no to that, especially if it's not seismically suitable. And then as far as B and C, well, it sounds like they're already sort of, happening. Whatever staff would have to do to provide temporary facilities while Fire Hall 8's being built, that's up to them. So can we divide B? This should actually be B1, 2, and 3, perhaps.
We can.
I hope that we could do
when
that,
we get
because
to it.
I can support B1 for sure. Thank you.
BA. Yeah, when we get to it, we can certainly do that. Councilor Woodward, you've spoken twice. Do you have something quick to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be, but I would get to speak twice on A and then twice on B, Mr.
Well,
Mayor.
yeah,
I'm
but we
gonna
did
be
kind
super
of set the
quick.
rules in the beginning, so
I'm going to be super quick if you'll
Yeah.
allow it.
I'll allow you, and then
Okay, I
I'll
appreciate
wrap
that.
up.
I appreciate that. I'm just going to speak to two things pretty quickly because there's just some clarification of other comments. I have not stated that Fort Langley Hall is a higher priority than any other hall. It's exactly what Mr. Becken was outlining. This is in preparation for replacement of Hall 8 and the process to do so. So if you're going to replace Hall 8, great. Okay, we make that decision. Oh, wait, it's going to take us a year to upgrade Hall 2 in Fort Langley. Maybe we get on with that sooner. So we cost that out, potentially do it now. That's all it's looking for is information. And in terms of land cost for the mixed use, potentially affordable housing component, the idea that we're going to go buy land and do that kind of a project, we already have the land and it's at fire halls. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have some questions. So Mr. Backen, we have a facilities manager who and the chief of the fire chief who look at all of our facilities, recreation centers, all the fire halls, the civic center, the operations center, every building that we have, and then I would think through assessments would come to council with like a needs list. This is the building that needs to be upgraded. This is the building that needs to be replaced. So I tend to always go with what staff will bring to us as their priorities. I myself could go wandering around every fire hall and recreation center and start finding one that I like to say, well, we should replace this one. Hall 7 is a great example. It's you can't even fit a modern fire truck into it, yet no one's mentioned Hall 7, and we could go on and on and on. I prefer the system that we have, where we have professionals that assess our facilities and come to council with a list of priorities that we see every budget, and that we go through them and we vote on them. And that's the way I've operated the last 10 years, is that staff are the ones. I just don't agree with this A or B. I think the staff are already doing this, and for us to jump into it and get into this level of management, I can't support. So just those are my comments. So I think we'll move on to the voting. So on A, I'll call the question on A. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Longmire Froese opposed. Then on B, first of all, we got to get through this. Councillor Richter wanted to have a referral motion. Councillor Long wants to have a division motion. Perhaps what's the best, go with the referral motion first, and if that fails, in a division motion, or we go on each one. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, so the referral motion, I want to strike the phrase, the 2022 budget process. And I want to replace it with the phrase, the first priorities session or CPC meeting of the new 2022 council.
So that's an amendment. Okay.
That's an amendment. That's striking
so
the place.
Seconder to the amendment. Councillor Arneson moves amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Richter, did you wish to speak to it? You already have. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just saying this to me is a political decision that the taxpaying public has to take into consideration for the next election and give their direction to the new council going forward. This could very well be a priority decision for them, but that's, rather than play this political game right now, right before the last budget of this council, I think is nonsense. So that's why we should send this where it properly belongs, which is the next council. Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I want to clarify, is it an amendment or a referral? So I wasn't clear on that.
It's amendment, but the motion is a refer to. So all Councillor Richter has removed the 2022 budget process and added words.
So we would refer A, B, and C all to CPC in the next council.
That's right.
That's right. Okay, so I obviously don't support that because I would like to see a potential, some funding of some design work in the 2022 budget. So if we send it to CPC, how would we say, oh, the staff might need some very small amount of money to go and do some feasibility studies, or hey, what's the new hall going to cost, or hey, here's what it might look like. How is that going to occur? We're going to lose a year to even present what a cost might be to the next council. I don't think there's any expectation that somehow we're going to be funding fire hall in this budget. But we're going to lose a year or two for no reason. Because the next council can then review the results of some initial design work or some review of what's occurring under A, which is already going to staff. So why not then look at the process to potentially replace Hall 8 or any other hall that staff wants to add to the report? So why we would send this to CPC? When I first got elected, we referred to CPC as where you send good ideas to die. And it has felt like that in some cases because some of these things sit on there for 2 years. And because the meeting's just never called. So that I don't want to see happen. I don't want to see a Fire Hall 8, the concept of potentially exploring Fire Hall 8, just sit on a CPC queue.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, your point of order.
The amendment reads to the first priorities session or CPC meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Okay,
Councilor Woodward.
So yeah, that's my feeling anyway, is to start the discussion with this council and lay the groundwork for the next one, just as we do in any number of other projects. I don't know why this one would be deferred further. Of course, it can be left as fodder for an election campaign, as will a number of things that this council has done and has not done. I don't want to add Fire Hall 8 to that list. I want to discuss that at the next budget process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Long.
Yeah, I don't get this political, angle or deferring it to the next election or the next council at all. I think if this is a concern that's come up, and I think we should refer this whole thing to staff. And why wait a year? I heard Mr. Bakken say that I'm sure that the staff would like to see these improvements done, but there's always a tight budget, isn't there? There's always a need for money and the priorities and so forth. And, we had that discussion earlier on in the meeting that there's all these demands upon our tax dollars. So I think that this is something that should not be deferred. I think I do agree that this could be discussed at the next CPC meeting of this council. Why would we punt it to the next council? That doesn't seem fair to me. And a year delay could be a real problem, could be disaster. So I'm not, it seems to me it's a bit muddled up, but I would prefer to refer the whole thing to staff like you said, Your Worship. You said that, well, we kind of look at staff to give us advice. Let's refer this to staff and they can come back with a report and some suggestions on how we could proceed. Maybe they've already got it under control. Maybe they have some plans already that they can share with us, and maybe that could come up at a sooner meeting. But I don't think deferring it for a year is a good thing at all. If it's on the table now, we should deal with it. So I guess I can't support what's the amendment, but I would like to see it referred to staff if that fails.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I don't see this as being a political thing. You know, I think we have big decisions to make as a council, and this is one of them. And I don't think we should just defer all big decisions for the next council to decide on. So I'd rather see, I think as Councillor Long suggested, I'd rather see this come up as a topic at the next CPC meeting of this council. And we can then further discuss it, because I have more questions, and I'd like to hear more from staff and those who are responsible for facilities, and particularly fire halls. I'd like to hear more from them and to engage in this conversation at a CPC meeting. That would allow us still to have the discussion as part of this 2022 budget process, because we know the budget process goes for a few more months. And I'd rather see us go ahead on it and get a plan in place, and let this council start the process. We may not be deciding the final process. Certainly a future council will make final decisions on what it's going to look like and whether they want to continue funding it at that level, but I think I'd rather see it at the next CPC of this council. So I won't be voting for this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're getting some good ideas here by my colleagues here. I mean, the B said refer to 22 budget. You could take out the word budget, refer to 22 process, which is a staff vote for further council consideration. So, I mean, that's exactly what I think the idea is, what some members of council that are talking about. That's exactly the idea that we want to do, is get some ideas moving, some discussion happening and moving forward. And those are excellent points you just made. And I won't be supporting the referral to another council for after the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? And opposed? We have Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Long, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Woodward opposed. The motion fails. All right, the amendment fails. So we're back to B. Councillor Ferguson, your hand is still up. Did you have anything to add to B? Okay, so I'm going to call the question on B. Councillor Long, I know you mentioned something about division.
So let's, no, a division, I'm going to leave that alone. Why don't we just refer this to the council process committees? I think that's what I heard Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Whitmarsh say.
Okay,
to
this one.
Next
Okay.
CPC.
Well, with the next CPC is already full. That's next week. And we have two items that have already been referred to that. Plus we have budget. So
well, let's
I would
just say
say
refer to a CPC.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If that's your referral motion, is there a seconder? Councillor Whitmarsh seconds it.
And if I could speak slightly to that?
Sure. And I
So,
think we can move this
I'm
along
sure staff
quickly.
is sitting there, wondering what the heck's going. So this is an opportunity for staff to come forward with all of the information and facts about the condition of Hall 8, some of the plans and directions that they may have already envisioned, and we can have a good discussion about it and see how we can fit it in, make it work.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't see much difference actually between referring it to CPC in January or referring it to budget in January. It just seems like, what's the difference? So we'll discuss it at a CPC meeting versus just discuss it at a budget discussion. I don't see the difference. And I just don't, the process is a little bit different with CPC, but more cumbersome. So I don't see the need for referring this to CPC to discuss it under the same time frame under a more restrictive, complicated process. It's just changing the process to change the process for actually no benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Well, I mean, if you want to send it to CPC of this council, fine, but you do realize that this council can't really lock a future council in. The other thing is that we do have a fire master plan. We have made some decisions around that fire master plan. There are other decisions that are coming up relative to costing. And I don't know. I just think that if this was such a burning hot issue, why wasn't it on this council's table 3 years ago? Why is it just appearing today in the less than a year before the next election? Thank you.
You could say that about everything, I guess.
Mayor Frosch.
Muted. All right, I got it. It's getting late. So I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Woodward opposed?
I'm opposed to, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Richter opposed. It carries. All right, Councillor Woodward, move on to number 2. The last time you removed it because of
Yeah, no, I
member
thought
of council.
it appropriate to wait, so I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so you just want to withdraw for now?
No, I'm moving it.
Oh, moving it. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'll
Just
second.
going on past practice. That's all. Okay, moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Richter.
Yes, usually
And
Councillor.
go ahead, Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. Yes, I did defer it a few times. Usually Councillor Long is in attendance, but wasn't for quite a stretch there. So I thought out of appropriateness to wait. I want to read the motion just to clarify it a bit. Be it resolved that staff be directed to bring forward a draft amendment to the council procedure bylaw specific to section 1011, such that a resolution or bylaw adopted by a single vote majority. So the situation there is in regards to absent for a vote may require council to reconsider the vote again. This mirroring some of the language of the council procedure bylaw. And this is in regards to a hypothetical scenario around reconsideration of a council decision. So if council is to decide, for example, let's just pick an example, pick a park in Brookswood, and council votes to remove said park in Brookswood by a council vote of 4-3 and a council member is absent. That council member who's absent, who would have voted to not remove the park in Brookswood, that vote would have failed on a 4-4. And that park would still be there. However, that council member wasn't available for any number of reasons, which be for them to explain, but pretty good reasons from what I understand. So then this person, when they come back to council, then has to get a reconsideration motion. It's a procedural technicality. They have to move reconsideration to be allowed to vote on said removal of said park in Brookswood. That then is no debate, the way it's written in the council procedure bylaw. The 4 members of council who voted to remove the park in Brookswood can now defeat reconsideration, denying that returning council member their vote, which would have prevented the removal of the park in Brookswood, known to the members of council who voted down reconsideration. So it's very technical, challenging to follow, but for me, I didn't like what I saw, and I wanted to change the council procedure bylaw to prevent that from happening again, such that if someone is absent, they have the same power as the mayor currently has, which is you can place it for reconsideration on the agenda without a need for a vote, which will fail in that specific scenario. People elect all of us, and all of us who are able to vote on an item should be allowed to vote on the item. 4 members of council should not be removing a capital project, such as a park in Brookswood. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, Councillor Long. Oh, sorry, Councillor Whitmarsh is next.
Wait a minute.
Or I've got a list here, and I guess I missed Long. I don't know how that's with.
I think it's Long.
Okay, go Long. Go ahead. Then Whitmarsh.
I don't get it. It says, subsequent meeting, because the bylaw is provided for us here on O2 page 17. Upon sufficient notice, regardless of how he or she voted, they can move a motion that the adopted resolution or bylaw be reconsidered. Upon approval of reconsideration, the motion to rescind or amend is debatable and requires a majority vote to adopt. So I don't know if I've actually understood Councillor Woodward's explanation of the 4-4 thing, but it seems to me, and all the time that I've been on council too, that if a reconsideration is brought back because a councillor missed a meeting, we usually reconsider it. So I guess I'm a bit lost. Maybe I'll let somebody else speak. I think it's covered.
I can
already.
help clarify. If it goes back to the debate regarding the pool or the or the water park in Fort Langley, Council Woodward had declared a conflict, which took the council to one less. Member of council wasn't present, so now it was a council of 7. So the vote came, it was a 4-3 vote. And so that was one instance, I think, in 10 years I know of, that I would Council Woodward say that when I came back next time, the vote to reconsider was back to 8 councillors, or members of council, I should say, with 1 declaring conflict. So then it was defeated on a 4-4. That's what he's referring to, is that particular vote. I think that would help give a real life example to this.
Yeah, well, I think we've often said if we want to reconsider something, we can reconsider it. So whether or not you've got the 4-4 to reconsider, it would probably still go down, right, after it's been reconsidered. But anyway, okay, I think I better listen to some others, because maybe I can understand after somebody else speaks. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, so when I read through the whereas and the therefore, it seems that this only does apply if we have 2 members of council absent from the meeting. It wouldn't apply if we had 1 member missing, because it talks here about a single vote majority, which wouldn't happen in with 8 members of council. So this is a specific case for 7 members of council. And that's, I just want to clarify, that's how, at least how I see it. And then the other point that I'm wondering about is in the first whereas, it talks about that final capital project decisions should not occur in special closed meetings. And then it goes on in point 2, and it just says that minority of members of council to proceed with significant decisions. So I'm wondering, I guess maybe clarification to the mover, if the intent is that this would only, what they mean is to proceed with significant capital project decisions, or is this any kind of decision that might be deemed as significant? I'm wondering what the intent of the mover is. That might, again, that even narrows it further if now this only applies to significant capital project decisions versus any decision. Maybe that's a question through to the mover that might help.
Well,
clarify.
the mover can put his hand up and he'll put him on the
Okay,
list.
all right,
and answer
fair
those
enough.
questions.
I'll leave it
There may be more.
That's fine, I'll
Thank
leave
you.
it for there.
Right, thanks. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting thing that we've only got 8 members of council here. And in other meetings where we had 8, that the motion was withdrawn and brought back to a full council meeting. But here we are, a group of 8 again. Why are we debating this now? Why wouldn't we follow precedent and put it before a full council?
Right. I can give you a real quick answer. We do have quorum, and it is appropriate, as we did every other time. Councillor Ferguson.
A lot of good points made tonight. You know, I thought about this motion. I talked to the proponent. It came up once before. I think regardless of this motion today, I think there was a lot of confusion over that Fort Langley pool versus water park, and it moved quickly. I believe it moved a bit too quickly that was my opinion. And there weren't enough council members there to discuss it, which is always good, and it was a major decision. The public was involved, as Councillor Richter said before about the public being involved, as we all know, myself, Councillor Richter, and Councillor Long, about the fire process, about the public being involved. So, you know, that just went awry a bit, and certainly this type of a motion maybe can help something like that from going awry, because if we would have proceeded with a bit more time, got everybody, all members of council there, met with the public and proceeded accordingly, maybe, just maybe, the public would have seen, no, we can't keep the pool, or maybe we have another option for the pool, which I don't know, and there'd be majority of agreement, maybe unanimous agreement from both the public and council on a spray park. But that didn't happen, so that confused and surprised and perhaps left kind of a confusing, I guess, taste in some of our mouths. I'm not looking for fault in you, Mr. Mayor, or any members of council. Just this particular thing, in my mind, left it confusing. And when the other member of council did come back and say, look, let's try to look at this again, because here I am, and we didn't proceed with a new vote or another look at it. And those are my points, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Move on to, okay, who's next here? I'm losing track. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship.
So many lists going here. I missed list them on. Okay.
I appreciate the conversation and it's coming back. I guess I have concerns about the nature of the inclusion of a number of different components, I think, that are separate items to me when you're talking about closed meetings, when you're talking about significant decisions, taking advantage of a councillor's absence. I mean, some of these are very loaded kind of concepts that something's going on. So, I do understand that there can be some concern from time to time. My larger concern with this is, from my perspective, and I might be misguided and the only one that thinks this, but I would like to know through our legislative clerk, if people are not able to attend the majority of meetings through sickness, wouldn't it be the case that they could still come to the portion of the meeting that they wanted to vote on? I would find it remarkable if a person didn't know. I mean, they could be in the hospital in traction, but if a council package comes through and there's something that's really critical to a person, I would assume that now we can do electronic meetings, that we would be able to vote, irrespective of the fact of whether or not we were there. And if I'm sick, all I have to do is to croak out a yes or a no. That's about it. So I don't understand, because my concern would be that we can spend all the time that we do in vigorous debate and then have a situation. I mean, are we going to preempt ourselves from making decisions simply because, through circumstances beyond our control, a person isn't there who may have a vested interest? And how do I know if somebody has a strong vested interest unless they've said something in advance of this? So I really find the whole thing rather problematic. I don't find a problem with the current system that we have. I don't think that we specifically hide things behind closed doors. We've got a whole list under the community charter of the things. Anybody wants to challenge that, they're most welcome to. And certainly, if nobody ever calls me up, or generally wouldn't, and say, hey, I'm not coming, please, can we postpone this? Because if they did, I'd say, okay, well, that seems reasonable, because I think we're reasonable people around the council table. So I don't see any particular merit in supporting this, because in fact, I think we're going to make a lot more work for ourselves and cause even more confusion than we can bring upon ourselves from time to time, just with the regular rules that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I actually just had a question through to staff, if I may. The reason, I think it's, I've been trying to get this on the table here. I think this is the 4th meeting now. I've been trying to get this with somebody not here. Well, I'm here. I haven't missed a meeting all term. So, the reason I moved it tonight, just to get on with it. But I do recognize that Councillor Kroons isn't here, and I probably should have moved deferral. But I had one question through to Ms. Bauer, if I may. The reason I did it tonight as well is we have direction now to make some minor changes to the council procedure bylaw. So I didn't want you to bring those forward and then bring forward another set if this was to happen. So could we delay those little minor ones for one meeting if I move deferral and it's successful to the January meeting for a full council?
I think I could be convinced not to work on the bylaw over the Christmas holiday.
Pretty minor changes, yeah. So I'll move deferral to the January meeting for a full council, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you're gonna just
Yep,
okay.
move deferral to January.
Just remove deferral. Move deferral in the middle of debate. Just move second. We've had debate. I got to remember this order of speakers, because it carries on. So is there a seconder to the deferral? Councillor Ferguson. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Deferral, opposed? Councillor Richter, Mayor Froze, Councillor Long, Councillor Arneson. So that fails. So this is still on the docket. So do you
So I
wish to
still speak
say-
to it a bit more, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, yeah, you still can. Yeah,
So
you just
thanks.
moved over.
Yep, middle of my second one there. Yeah, so I think that this one here, I mean, I spoke a lot less on it than I should have, given the fact of the hour. We need to get into special closed. I'm not going to respond to every point. I'll leave it for the future. I think that in my estimation, it's not right for 4 members of council who know they don't have the votes to remove a capital project, and they only have them because 2 of us are not here. One of us because of a conflict of interest, which is legitimate and the process is followed, and for another reason you're all aware of. I just don't think it's the right thing to do. It's not what I would do. I think a council procedure bylaw amendment addresses it. If others think it's fine to do it, that's on them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll speak to it. I think it is appropriate for members of council to miss the odd meeting when occasion makes them. And we know of some have had medical issues. Others have had a loss of their family and have had to miss meetings. And I recall there's a meeting that closed where something was discussed and I missed it. And I supported council on that when I came back. I didn't ask for reconsideration. And that's just the nature of our business. We're elected, all of us, to serve our community, yet we can't all have perfect attendance records. And there's even provision in the community charter for that. We're a democracy and we rule by majority vote, whether there is a quorum of 5 or a quorum of 9. The people's business has to get done. And I think the procedure bylaw and the community charter considers this and allows for this. I hear what Councillor Woodward is saying, and I appreciate what he's attempting to do. However, I see that this motion really would hand tie this council, that we have work to do, and there are occasions where we have to miss a meeting, which is completely out of our control. And I think to look back and say, well, that person should be there. And I understand why members of council have to declare a conflict or can't make it because of a health issue or a personal issue or something comes up that's unavoidable. I remember one councillor rushed to her daughter, birth of a granddaughter or grandchild, and how do you say no? Stay here. You must vote. So there is a lot of provisions there, and I understand kind of the conundrum that happened, but that is our system. So I think this maybe is directed at one incident, which I understand that was confusing and it was difficult, but this has more far-reaching implications on our work that we do, and I don't think that this would have to be employed too often. And yeah, it's I think well-meaning, but I think it's too complex, too complicated for us moving forward. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? So Mayor Froze, Councillor Long, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Arneson are opposed, and so it fails. Okay, so Councillor Davis, Salmon River floodplain. Do you want to just move it? We've read it, it's great. Or you go ahead and read it if you want.
There we are. Yes, okay. Due to the fact that I'm a poor reader and it's late, so I'll just go to the therefores. Therefore, be it resolved that council directs staff to engage a qualified professional consultant as anticipated in 2012 to undertake based on updated terms of reference, an analysis of the conditions, interrelationship, and other relevant data to recommend improvement options, including the feasibility and effectiveness of an additional pumping capacity in consideration of an applicable federal and provincial regulation requirement for the installation and operation of a second screw pump with costs estimated at approximately $50,000 pre-approved as part of the 2022 budget. I so move.
I'll second it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I wanted to second this one. David worked so hard on it.
Oh.
I totally agree with him on it.
Actually,
So moved by Councillor Davis, second by Mayor Froese.
Okay.
I don't often do that, but this one I did. Go ahead, Councillor Davis, you wish to speak to it.
Okay, I actually got quite a bit of help. It's obvious. Okay, the reason I bring this, and we put all those whereases in there, is a few little facts here. This last month was a record-breaking event. And should we be making rules when we may never see an event like that again? Well, I think we will see more events. However, 25% of the rainfall in the Township of Langley goes through the Salmon River pump station. Did you know that? That's about 8,000 hectares or about 17,000 acres. And it's going to get worse because of all the development upstream as time goes on. There are so many. If you in the whereas, I guess maybe I'll go here. When this event came, we were out and helping, trying to get things figured out, and it became more and more apparent to me, because I would go down to the pump station and the pumps would be shut off. The water would be as low as it's ever been. And there was flooding up Glover Road and on 88th. And so I'd wonder, well, why would the pumps be shut off? But there's such a delay in the river. And we also fight. We don't fight it, but the flow gates, when they're open, they will empty the river faster than anything. Even if we had 4 screw pumps, the floodgate, but we don't always get that. And that's why we generally have an issue in the springtime, where this was November. So I know that a study is not what people that farm in the floodplain want to hear, because they're the ones standing in water. But so I look at this as a gathering of all the facts, because it does get kind of complicated. DFO sets rules out. Provincial government owns the Salmon River. We have lots of, like 88th was flowing, water was flowing over. There's a pipeline on the 88th bridge that can be ruined. So we have to protect our own infrastructure. One thing that, after talking to different landowners, that came very apparent to me was in 2012, there was to be a study done that was not done. And it's going to require an independent person that's qualified to bring all the facts to the table, because the last thing we want to do is do something that just because I don't understand it, I think, oh, well, put a bigger screw pump in when there's other things that maybe we have to do. Maybe I'll just, I think that we need to put this in for a pre-approved as part of the 2020 budget. And I know we've been doing that this evening, trying to get everything in there, but this is something that's long overdue. And we've got different commodity, like there's the environmental aspect of it. As a township, we don't want to wreck, like that event had rain coming over 2 of the major roads into Fort Langley, and that hasn't happened, for a long, long time. Anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Maybe if there's somebody else, I can come back to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Chair. Thank you, Worship. I did have a potential, I'm not going to call it a friendly amendment. I would never be unfriendly towards Councillor Davis. But I did have a thought regarding the language here, and it may be unnecessary. But in the last paragraph, it talks about the applicable federal and provincial regulatory requirements for the installation and operation of a second screw pump. I would prefer if the language referred to a fish-friendly pump of some type. Because I know in the past, and I'm not really conversant with the difference, but I realized that in the past, there was a problem with the original pump that was put in there because it was very deleterious to some salmon, and it was upgraded. So if we could just maybe consider taking out the screw pump language and put in fish-friendly pump, I would feel better about the motion. Because otherwise, I'm 100% in support of the motion. So I don't know how the mover of the motion would feel about that. But
Sure. I'll just ask staff, Mr. Seffi, I think the other one we've been calling fish-friendly pump. Just call it fish-friendly pump, or is there another term that satisfies?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the intent was to, in fact, make it a fish-friendly pump. That is generally the reference to a screw pump. And the other name that's been referenced in the past has been an Archimedes pump. So I think it's fine, but it's subject to Councillor Davis agreeing with it. Yeah.
So the motion's on the floor. So basically, the amendment would be just to add the words fish-friendly screw pump, and if there's unanimous consent, we can just add that as an amendment, as you call a friendly amendment. And Councillor Richter. You're muted. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, fish-friendly screw pump. I'm in favor.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll just add that as an amendment then by unanimous consent. And we'll move on to Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to know why this has to be $50,000 pre-approved.
Mr. Seffi?
I apologize, Your Worship. Is the question why does it have to be?
The question is the amount of, the amount is the estimated amount of 50,000. So the question is why 50,000?
No, I don't object to 50,000. I object to the pre-approved.
Oh, pre-approval. Okay.
Yeah. Your Worship, the estimate that was done in 2012 was actually, I believe, over $200,000. So this $50,000 is to get the ball rolling. In fact, it doesn't include any public participation, any public engagement, I should say. It doesn't include any survey. So it's essentially a desktop exercise. So in order for us to get going on that, the decision was made to request Council's consideration of pre-approval.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. Is there any other business, Councillor Richter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize because it is so late at night. I'll just go through this list really quickly, but it's from the items distributed. I'd like to call attention to today's list, December 13th, item number 10 on page 22, with regards to no tree cutting signs in Steele Park. Could council get a follow-up on that? With respect to December 9th, Tourism Langley, could council get a presentation from them on what they've done in the last year to boost visits to the township? This is in reference to their report on item number 3, page 6.
Okay.
Item number 5, page 43, again, December 9th. Could council get a presentation or a report on this as well? This is about the 216th Street south of 88th. I'm quite concerned the 216th Street residents will not be very happy with increasing the size of the road there. Question or item number 12 on page 312. Could we find out from staff why Township is not offering a heat pump rebate? That's it for December 9th. So items 3, 5, and 12. Going to December 2nd, item number 4 on page 11, stormwater management in Campbell Valley. Could council get a report on that from staff or a response on that from staff? Item number 6 on page 28. I was quite concerned about this because this is about council members getting payments in lieu of municipal pension plan. Was that brought up at a council meeting? Because I don't recall that. Like, why are we getting this report? Why is it being sent to council? Was it a request from a specific council member?
Your worship, we have that as a request of a council member. It contains a memo, but no recommendation.
Okay. Well, it's a very interesting one, and I don't know why staff would give it to all of council and not just give it back to the requesting council member. Just an observation.
Your worship, it was requested to be provided. That's why it was provided.
Okay. Can we find out who asked for that? Because I don't think anybody here has talked about pension benefits. Anyway, item number 12 on page 43, is there a cougar rooming in Township? Where? And is there something that can be done about it?
I think they roam all the time in the township. And if I can just interject, I did hear from one of our staff about this sighting, and the game officer was advised, but it is common for them to show up. They're wildlife, and so far they don't pose a danger. There's not much we can do about the wildlife, roaming around in parts of Langley.
No, as long as
I don't know.
Not attacking animals, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. But it's a difficult one to control.
Number 18 on page 82. There's a request that council provide a letter of support for funding for paramedic training, and I think it's in our best interest to provide that letter of support. So I guess I have to make a motion about that.
Yeah, I think so, because that would be good to come from council. I did look at that, and quite often, these letters come through, and if there's no cost to the township, I do. But this is a private business, so that it gets a little bit dicey when we ask council to write letters in support of private businesses. So that was a concern. I know I looked at it too.
All right. Well, perhaps staff could give us a follow-up on that, because it seems to me paying for paramedic training is a good thing. Item number 20 on page 87, the student bike accident in Willoughby. Can we get a report on that? And item number 23 on page 92, basement flooding due to blocked storm drains. Again, I think we need a follow-up report on that. And I'm going to have a notice of motion for the next meeting. I'm not going to put it on tonight, other than the topic, which is about population increases in Willoughby. I'll write it out and send it to the clerk in time for the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I actually wanted to know about the request for pension items as well, municipal pension. I wanted to know where that came from. But if we're not allowed to know, that's what we're murmuring over here. Who's making requests about municipal pensions?
It came from a member of council, so we'd prefer if they raised it and it was asked to be placed on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Okay, and so for item 2 on December 9th, that was the letter sent to, it was a response letter regarding to a request for COVID relief from the province. That was on item 2 on December 9th. It's in reference to a letter, it's a response to a letter. So I'm wondering if we council could get the original letter that was sent requesting that, if possible. Okay, and then I had one other thing about getting a fair number of emails about a property, and I think it's been raised earlier, about cleared of 46 trees under the tree protection bylaw. Could I get something, because I don't want to sort of have us all requesting, is it possible to get just a memo explaining the permit applied for, the process to achieve that removal level? And then apparently there's a consideration of payment for that, which I didn't know was an option. So I'd like to get that clarified in writing, what that process was that resulted in that result, if that's possible.
And we can circulate the response that was provided to the first 2 or 3 inquirers, so we can.
Okay,
negotiate
yeah,
a-
so I waited for the council meeting, so if there's something that's gone out, I'd like to get a copy of that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I'll move to P. It's a motion to resolve a special closed meeting for items on the agenda and on table. And if I could have a mover. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Councillor Woodward?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I had a question regarding the agenda. I also wanted to add a property item, and then I have a question.
Okay, go ahead with the question.
Yeah, so I'd like to add a property item. I wanted to know why E1, why that's a special closed item.
Okay, so we'll to bring that up into close when we go through the agenda and closed, and that's the time.
So that explanation is not provided here, I'm assuming.
No, that's right.
Okay, so yeah.
But
okay.
it can be, but certainly it's valid to bring that up in close.
I don't know why it's on like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's legislation, I guess. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you. A motion to terminate. Councillor Whitmarsh, second by Councillor Davis. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Take 5, stretch, and then we'll dive into the last closed meeting of the term. And Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for watching.